Good morning, distinguished delegates, colleagues, and friends, and welcome to our workshop, Challenging the Status Quo of AI Security, held as part of the ITU AI for Good Global Summit here in Geneva. And I'm Naing Hu from CAICT, that is China Academy of Information and Communication Technology, and it's really a great honor to serve as today's Masters of Ceremony. And as we all know, AI evolving quickly. And during yesterday's AI Governance Day, we heard many thoughtful reflections on the urgent challenges that come with the rapid progress and the risks that call for immediate actions. As ITU Secretary General Ms. Doran emphasized that technical standards are critical in steering the AI revolution in the right direction by turning high-level commitments into operational safeguards. So today, on AI Standards Day, we take a concrete step forward. We focus on one of the most pressing and fundamental issues, AI security, and explore how standardization can offer practical and effective tools to address it. To officially open our workshop, it is my great pleasure to invite Mr. Arnaud Taddei, Global Security Strategist at Broadcom and Chair of the ITUT Study Group 17. Let's welcome.
Thank you, Naing, and good morning, everybody. That's the last day for AI for Good, and it's my pleasure to have you in this workshop. So, SG17, for those who don't know, is the acronym for the Study Group 17, which is the study group that deals with security and trust. So if you don't know what this is, you probably all know it through another name. You all know the X.509 protocol, which is the public key infrastructure, and X.509 represents the name of a standard that SG17 produced 30 years ago and maintains year after year since then. We do plenty of other things, but this is just for you to reconnect the dots. So I'm the new chair for the UK. As a French and Swiss, I let you think what happened that a French has to speak in the name of the UK government. If you would have told me that 40 years ago, I would have said, nah, it's not happening. But it happened. It's a great partnership. So the issue we are trying to recognize here, and why the name Challenging the Status Quo of AI Security is, first of all, we have to challenge the status quo for security itself. Before AI took off, let's say 2 years ago, we were already suspecting, are we really successful in tackling security? And frankly speaking, when you see that the cyber criminals made $6 trillion of business in 21, moving to $10 trillion of business, just to remind yourself, the GDP of the EU is 18 trillion. So one, the level is way too high, and secondly, they are growing their business. So what's going to happen when AI really is there? Well, I suspect it's going to accelerate. So we can't really say we are successful. So why would be a long story, but then when AI came, we realized, it's a threat. Social engineering, we hit harder, operators are going to automate attacks and so on. But it could be as well an opportunity. So with this group, we realized the opportunity to make this workshop. We could have been boring and come back on what is security and blah, blah, blah. But the team is, I'm very pleased by the team. We managed to regroup here for this workshop, and we decided to attack exactly the keyest problems we believe are important now. So why this is because at the end of the day, after this workshop, there will be a report. So all of what you will contribute today, meaning the panelists, the speakers, the moderators, and you in the room, will be transcribed in a report. And this report will be used to steer where the next direction for standardization. So why it is important is because standardization is to recognize the moment when we have too many technologies and we say, okay, we need to reduce this number of technologies or solutions or principles, recommendations to a smaller number. Why we need to do that is because if we don't do that, we will have a lot of frictions on the market. Frictions means we are going to lose a lot of money, a lot of resources and time to all repeat and redo the same things. That's very simple. So in order to organize that, We are going to have 4 parts. The first one is the keynotes from Sounil Yu, and the reason why Sounil matters is, first of all, he's a legendary person in security itself, with the cyber defense matrix at the foundation of the CISA Zero Trust architecture and other things. He's a great thinker, and he's going to help us frame how we need to think about it. That's the first part. The second part is we have an elephant in the room called agentic AI and multi-agentic AI. And so that's where we have an opportunity. We come back on what the opportunity is. I will let you discover the panel and discover the people we have. We have the father of multi-agentic AI in the room worldwide. We have the number of brains we have here would actually feed a nuclear power station, to be honest with you. And we have as well the other aspect, which is the identity piece of it. So it's all good to propose some solutions in agentic, multi-agentic AI for how they can talk to each other and what are the properties they need to exchange, but we need to make sure we have authentication that works with it. And finally, we need to look at the future. So I will let you discover this panel. I want to thank all of those who helped us make this workshop happen. First of all, TSB, because there was a robust conversation between myself and TSB leaders, and after this robust conversation, we said, okay, what do we do? And we said, let's make a workshop, and actually it triggered the whole standardization day here. So I'm very, very thankful for them, because the timing of this mattered by the week. I'm not kidding you. So time is of essence. So thank you to TSB. Thank you for all the people who made it happen. Thank you to Naing, and thank you to the steering committee. It was fun. It was really fun to see the energy, the battle, the arm wrestling, the no, the yes. It was really fun. And so on these good words, I'm going to stop here, and I will welcome the first speaker, Sounil, and we are going to engage the workshop. Thank you very much.
Okay, all right. Hang on, let me pull up my slides. All right, so I'm Sounil Yu, and it's great to see everyone here. Are there any Greeks in this room? Okay, if there are, then I think it's important that you guys lodge a protest to the PAL Expo and let them know that A and alpha are kind of the same thing. Okay, all right. So who am I? So I used to be the chief scientist at Bank of America. I'm currently the CTO and the chief AI safety officer at a company called Gnostic. I've done a lot of things in cybersecurity, 30 plus years of working in cybersecurity, and I've won a lot of things. But when it comes to AI, I want to be pretty clear that there seems to be a lot of experts in the context of AI. I am not one of them, okay? So I want to be clear that I'm not one of them, because I just want to manage expectations here that I've just barely passed the peak of Mount Stupid. There's this mental model called the Dunning-Kruger curve, and it gives us a perspective of how much confidence one has in their answers when they are just barely competent in what they are talking about. Now, I'll let you gauge what you think is my competence, but I am definitely not confident in what I know about AI. But what I'm going to share with you is how I've got past the peak of Mount Stupid, okay? And that's all I'm going to claim, that I've gotten past the peak of Mount Stupid. And the way that I've done that is through the use of mental models. So for those who are not looking at the screens, I want to warn you that I have a lot of visuals, mental models that you actually need to see to be able to understand what you're going to see, understand these models. And so just letting you know that if you don't pay attention, sometimes you might miss the whole point. So the perspective that I would offer is, when it comes to mental models, it actually helps us compress the time it takes for us to shorten the time for competency. Okay, what enables us to increase competency really fast? My view is it's mental models. And mental models holds the key for a lot of things, and hopefully you'll see this as we go. But the perspective is we all want to increase competency very fast, and mental models is the key for doing that. Now, there's a lot of mental models out there, and I'm not going to go over all these, but I'm just going to pick out a few and share with you how I've applied some of these mental models to understand AI, identity in AI, agentic AI, all these things that we're dealing with AI, and what's going to be discussed in today's session as well. Now, there is also a warning I'm going to give you. I've spent a lot of time looking at mental models, And there's a guy by the name of Daniel Kahneman, and he introduces this concept of theory-induced blindness, or model-induced blindness. So if you look at a model and you think that's how the world operates, well, you will tend to miss its flaws, okay? You will tend to not be able to recognize its flaws. And this also couples nicely with another quote from a gentleman by the name of George Box: all models are wrong, but some are useful. So the models I'm going to show you are wrong, okay? But hopefully you'll see how they're useful for doing things that we will see in AI itself. Now, Arnaud mentioned that one of my specific claims to fame is that I actually created a mental model of my own. It's called the Cyber Defense Matrix. And it's a simple model that I created to do something that is a real pain for cybersecurity, which is we're inundated with all these vendors, and we're trying to figure out what do they actually do. And when I was at Bank of America, that was part of my job. And so I used this mental model to help me understand where things fit. And it became a useful mental model not just for this, but as Arnaud mentioned, it became the basis for the Zero Trust Maturity Model that the US government's CISA agency also uses to establish how we look at zero trust, okay? Now, this mental model, again, is wrong, okay? Because when I use this model, it's really useful, but I realized when I tried to squeeze AI into it, it just didn't work, okay? I was like, where does AI fit in this? And I tried, and I realized, okay, this is a wrong model. And so I had to look at other models. But as I looked at other models, I was looking at this as well and saying, gee, I wonder, well, let's look at this model in a slightly different dimension, okay? And this is going to get a little complicated, so I have to warn you here. So imagine this in 3 dimensions, okay? But specifically, look at a particular dimension like a domain, like networks, okay? And I look at networks, and what do we see in the network space? Well, we see, of course, the OSI model. We see these different layers. And we say, okay, well, that helps us understand the network better, right? Well, when I looked at AI, my initial thought was, there has to be something in the data layer, because data is also a pretty key element of AI itself. And I said, is there a similar OSI model for data? And lo and behold, there is. It's called the DIKW pyramid. And this became my journey to understand, okay, there's a mental model called the DIKW pyramid, and I'll explain more what that is. And could that be perhaps the basis for just understanding this space that was really kind of unexplored around data? And so let me explain what that pyramid is. So the DIKW pyramid, it stands for data, information, knowledge, and wisdom. And what I would argue is that we've seen a progression of technologies that have now moved us up to the knowledge age. So in other words, tools like ChatGPT put us squarely in the knowledge layer. We are delivering knowledge tools to knowledge workers. I don't think anybody would dispute that, okay? All right, well, great. What does the knowledge layer look like? Or rather, let me frame it slightly differently. What is the problem space for AI, okay? Well, if you ask that question in isolation, it's kind of hard to figure out what the problem space looks like. But the nice thing about this pyramid is that you have an anchor. We know the problem space for data. Problems like data privacy, data quality, data engineering, data security. Well, those same words, when you put it to information, they still work. And when I finally put it to the word knowledge, we now have this problem space for AI. If I can replace the word AI with the word knowledge, I now have a mental model for understanding what are the challenges I'm going to face when it comes to AI itself. So let's walk through some examples, okay? Let's take knowledge quality. Knowledge quality. Well, I think everyone here knows what a data quality issue is, or you know what data quality, everyone's faced data quality concerns. What is a knowledge quality concern? Anyone? Accuracy. It's a really common word that we use now for AI systems, LLMs. Hallucinations. Okay, so hallucinations is a knowledge quality problem, okay? But let me offer an interesting observation here. Let's suppose my data quality was perfect. Will I still have a knowledge quality problem? Yes. Okay. So that's an interesting observation here. The other consideration, let's look at the knowledge privacy for a moment. So again, everyone understands what data privacy is. What exactly is knowledge privacy? Well, in the US, certainly in Europe, there's a lot of concerns around data privacy, okay? But I think we're actually missing the point around data privacy. What we really care about is knowledge privacy. And what's the difference between data privacy and knowledge privacy? Well, in the US, 7 years ago, we had this issue with this company called Cambridge Analytica. And what did they do? They didn't violate our data privacy. They violated our knowledge privacy. They used whatever they could get from Facebook, and they inferred attributes about us. And those inferred attributes, there's no field in Facebook you turn off that says, don't share my political affiliation, right? It's a new form of inference that creates some interesting challenges here. Now, we're here in SG17's sponsored workshop here. So I was like, okay, what exactly is knowledge security? Well, knowledge security appears something like this inside of an enterprise. So you roll out a large language model, or you roll out any sort of system. And the goal here, again, is to be able to share value. But instantly, within an enterprise, we oftentimes see oversharing. Okay, so this violation, this ability to transcend boundaries, is a knowledge security problem. Okay, so this is an example of how we can see the same sort of model inside of security as well. Okay, well, how do you tackle a knowledge security problem? Well, when you see oversharing inside your enterprise, what's your first reaction? Typically, the first reaction is, we've done no data governance. We haven't done any classification. We really have a lot of problems with our data. Is that not what you typically say, right? But think about that for a moment in context of this pyramid, in this model. What we just said is, I have a data problem, and I have an information problem. And I'm applying my data and information approaches for a knowledge problem. Do you see the problem there, okay? It's like saying, for those in the network space, it's like saying, I have a layer 7 issue. I want to block Facebook.com. Let's see how it works if I try to block it at layer 3 and layer 4 of the OSI model. How did that work out? Not too well. So we're going to have the same situation here where we're trying to block something at the knowledge level. We're trying to do security at the knowledge level. And yet we have data and information-centric protocols and tools to do so. Moreover, when you apply controls at the bottom layer, what happens? And again, for those who are not looking, I want to say there's some visuals here you're going to miss. What happens is you shrink this bottom part of this pyramid. And when you shrink this bottom part of this pyramid, what do you end up with? You end up with a stupid LLM. And who wants that, right? That's ultimately not the goal that we have. And so if our approach is to try to fix the bottom part of the pyramid, we just have to recognize that the top part's going to be ruined as well. In fact, this happens not just in security, this happens all the time in a lot of other instances. For example, we want to get rid of bias in our models, right? Sounds great. Except that when you remove bias from your data set, guess what happens to the model? It becomes more biased, okay? And there's a ton of academic studies on this. A great one is fairness through awareness. Not fairness through blindness, meaning removing bias, but fairness through awareness. Keep the bias in the model. Know that that bias, that the data set is biased, and based on what you know about the bias, start fine-tuning again, fine-tuning based on that bias. But if you remove the bias, you no longer have an anchor to fine-tune against. So the point is that removing the data, removing the information, ends up making the model worse. But as we mentioned with the data quality, knowledge quality issue, even if you make it perfect, you still have an inference issue. Can you infer things like layoffs from legitimate access to future building space or future equipment purchases? And the answer is yes, you can still infer things. And so even if you can do it perfectly in the bottom, you still have problems because we have a knowledge level solution. Or we have a knowledge level problem. And so the perspective is, if you really want to control, if you think about the standards, if you need standards for AI, there's only so much you can do to rely upon standards at the lower levels. Okay? If you need a standard for layer 7 of the OSI model, there's only so much you can rely upon for controls at layer 3 and layer 4. Again, for those who know the network analogy. But here's also an interesting perspective. We struggle right now with a lot of the standards down here. As I mentioned, we all have problems with data. We all have problems with trying to classify information. But let me give you a sense of where the future is also heading as well. So back in the day, when all we had were databases, you give people database level access, SQL level access. And managing identities, managing security at that level, wow, what a pain. Then we eventually had applications that we wrote on top of those databases. What that meant was we can simplify our access at the bottom layer. We can start removing accesses. You don't need people having SQL level access, okay? Now we have a new layer of abstraction. And frankly, people rather come in through that new layer as well. So we have this challenge today. We're still trying to work through all the challenges of how do we manage security at the data level and the information level. But let me just give you a hope for the future, which is maybe those problems can be left over because we now have newer tools and technologies and new problems to deal with. So the main takeaway, here are a couple of takeaways then for this particular mental model. First, we have a new layer. It's the knowledge layer. And we have to first recognize that that new abstraction has occurred. The patterns that we saw, again, data quality, knowledge quality, you can use those patterns to understand the shape of the future. We need to make sure that we have the solutions at the right layer. So again, if you're trying to apply solutions at the data and information layer, it's just not going to work for the knowledge layer. Same goes with the standards that we talk about. Further, but moreover, you try to apply controls at the lower layers, it affects the upper layers. But the other approach is also notable too, which is you affect things at the higher layer, and that may allow us to solve some of the problems at the lower layer. Okay? So that's the takeaway for the DIKW pyramid. That's just one of several other models. So let me show you another model, okay? The other model is called by the way, so one of the things I love about mental models is that it bridges connections across different cultures, it aligns our thinking. Again, as I joked in the beginning, my mental model of alpha and A were in the same space. So I went down to room A, okay? That's very confusing when you have mental models that just are in conflict. But nonetheless, the idea of a mental model helps us understand bridge connections. And one of the things that we're trying to do here is bridge connections in terms of standards and such. All right, so let me talk about the next mental model. The next one is called the OODA loop. It stands for Observe, Orient, Decide, Act. But I made some slight changes, and I used the word sensing, sense-making, decision-making, acting instead. And the perspective here is that each of these layers corresponds to a set of actions and activities. But what I wanted to make sure that it's evident is that there is a distinction between AI and automation or robotic automation. There's a distinction between sense-making and acting. And in between is this thing called decision-making. I'll talk more about that in a moment. But that is a very clear, we want to call it out explicitly because just as much as you saw the DIKW pyramid call out knowledge as a separate layer, we need to call out these as separate layers too because this becomes, you'll see a little later, the agentic AI OSI model. Okay? What does that look like? Well, let's look at that let's break this out into specific pieces now. So here what you're seeing is the OODA loop again, but I've specifically assigned the sense-making and decision-making function to the human. The human is making that, is doing the activity of sense-making and decision-making. I've turned over to the machine to automate, completely do sensing and acting. And there are some use cases for this, like automated patching. Now, in the context of automated patching, I want to make sure I have controls. I want to have controls around sensing. I want to have controls around acting. For sensors, I want to make sure I have really good sensors. And I want to know those sensors are who they say they are. In other words, I need a clear form of identity for the sensors. Then on the acting, I want to have controls on the acting. I want to have controls around the scope of actions. I want to have a big red stop button. I want to have the reverse gear. There are things I want to have controls around for sensing and acting when I allow something like automated patching. So an example of automated patching would be I trust Microsoft and their Windows update, and the action I want to take is apply only to workstations. Do not apply to servers, only workstations, go. So that would be an example of where you allow sensing to acting. Let's now add sense-making. So we add sense-making, and we're letting the machine, again, do sense-making on our behalf. In this case, I've now added, because I've added sense making as a function, I need controls specifically around sense making. The controls for sensing and acting are already in place, or should already be in place, or the kind of controls that we've defined here would apply in the second state as well. Okay? A classic example of this is security orchestration and automated response, where the human has defined the playbooks, but the machine goes right up to the playbooks, picks the playbook, moves forward. Okay, but we reserve the right for decision making. The last step, I'm sure you can figure out, is where the machine does all four. And this is squarely where agentic AI fits as well. So again, at this point, I've already defined controls for sensing. I've already defined controls for sense making. I already have defined controls for acting, and they all still apply. But now I need specific controls for decision making. Because what I'm now asking the machine to do is to do autonomous decision making and determine what are the courses of action, determine what are the processes and the business workflows I want this system to take. But here's the thing that I want to make sure it's very, very clear. What's the real difference between case number 1 and 2 and case number 3, agentic AI? The real difference is, again, decision making. What is the output of decision making? The output of decision making is new processes, new workflows, new ways of doing things, which you then automate, okay? But consider this for a moment. Once you discover a new workflow or new way of doing things, and by the way, it will discover tons of ways to do it poorly as well, but once you discover one that actually works, you actually want to revert to case number 1 or 2 to implement those workflows. You don't actually want agentic AI to continue to make up random things, okay? You want a very deterministic system where once you determine what decisions to make, you don't need the system to continue to make different decisions for things that have become routine. Case number 1 and number 2 are business as usual. And once you understand what business as usual is, move to those models. Don't continue to rely upon agentic AI for those things that have now become business as usual for a system that has figured that out. Consider the scenario that I give for this last case is, imagine what you've hired 100 interns, and WCPGW is what could possibly go wrong, okay? You will release 100 interns, and they go stumble about your organization, breaking business processes, breaking your security policies, breaking everything they can imagine. Well, not because they're trying to break anything, but just because that's what they do, right? And out of that process, out of that scenario, what you end up with is you discover where things are broken, where things can be improved, and you adopt those, and you make that part of business as usual. So this is a perspective, again, of looking at using the mental model of the OODA loop to just understand where does agentic AI fit in, but also now in the context of standards, where do we need standards for each of these different pieces? So there's a standard that we need for sensing. There's a standard that we need for acting. Like, how do you define actions? How do you define what sensors are? And then how do you also define the connection between the two? When you add sense making, we now have another connection we need to make, as well as understanding what are the standards for sense making. And then lastly, for agentic AI, we need the standards for the interconnection across all these, as well as the standards for the actual activity itself. Okay. Now, I'm not a standards person, but I've been in standards, and I only tell people I'm not in standards because it's a lot of work and painful. But anyway, but the perspective. So a lot of these standards are from OASIS, at least the ones that I'm familiar with. But the goal here, so I may be missing some standards. But if there are standards to inject, let's fill it out and figure out where is our opportunity space. Moreover, it's not entirely clear to me if a standard in it's going to be the case where standards in a use case may only apply to that particular use case. But as you saw with the DIKW pyramid, is there a template that we can follow? Is there a pattern that we can see? Because the same patterns of sensing will apply across each of the different modes of operation. All right, so that's the agentic side. Now, what happens when you have 100 interns or you have multi-agent sort of models. What do you do? This is just for a single agent. What about multiple agents? The mental model I was trying to think about for that one started with what we see with respect to this complexity versus value matrix. So this complexity of value matrix is if things are very complex but low value, don't even think about it. Don't even worry about trying to do something here. But if it's simple and high value, then that's a quick win. There's no reason why you shouldn't just do it. In the context of this sort of mental model, it's a mental model that we use to prioritize work and allocate resources and such. When we think about agentic AI, we should also use this and say, okay, there are maybe the low complexity, the simple tasks, and the high value tasks, or even the low value tasks are worth turning over to agentic AI. But what if you start deploying more and more of these? Well, there's another mental model that we use in management called span of control. And span of control, you could say, okay, there are certain types of activities that you want to have, it's okay to have wide span of control, and other activities that you want to have much tighter span of control. And we can start saying, when it comes to agentic AI, if it's maybe these types of tasks, you can use low complexity agentic AI systems. But if it's a major project, if it's a high complexity, high value type of activity, you may want to consider how you want to limit that in terms of the span of control for your agents. And there's one other mental model out there. It's called Dunbar's number. Okay, so Dunbar's number talks about our social circles. The perspective is, among our family, there's like a close inner circle. It's only so many. Well, it says 5. So if you have 6 kids, I'm not sure what you do there, but. Anyway, you have the inner circle of 5 friends. You have your that's like your closest, like really, really, really close friends. Then you have 15 for your closer friends, and then you have friends, which is 50, and then so on and so on. Anyway, the perspective here is there's a whole mathematical treatise on this, why these numbers are the way they are. But I think we're going to face a similar sort of constraints. We're going to say, you know what? It doesn't make sense for one person to oversee 150 agents. It doesn't make sense for an AI system to oversee 150 agents. We may want to consider actually following similar sort of construct to say, there's a reason why mathematically these numbers make sense. We should consider those numbers as well when it comes to the span of control for AI multi-agents as well. All right, so let me wrap up with one last thing before I head off. And it's really around, this is all about standards, but I would also offer some of this may not be the right time for certain standards, okay? And how do we understand that? When is the right time for standards? And let me offer this one last model, mental model, and it's called the Cynefin model. Cynefin. It's Welsh or Celtic or something. I'm not sure what it is. But anyway, it's a mental model that moves from chaotic to complex to complicated to clear. And it cycles through in this clockwise fashion. And when it comes to AI, or rather, when it comes to anything, okay, cloud, quantum, whatever, okay, you should say, where are we in this spectrum? Well, when it comes to AI, most of us are probably would put ourselves somewhere between chaotic and complex. I've asked a lot of people, and they put themselves somewhere in that middle ground there. Well, this is actually useful because it tells you what you should do if you want to move from one stage to the next. So if you're between chaotic and complex, then it says your approach should be run multiple experiments. So if you're not experimenting with AI, you will never get past chaos. If you want to move to complex really fast, run multiple experiments, and don't even think about asking for best practices, because we don't even have good practices, let alone best practices. At best, we have emergent practices, okay? Now, on the left, when you're talking about chaotic and complex, we're dealing with things that we can't really change. And so the best you can do is manage your risks. On the right, there are things you can change. You can actually fix them, and you're buying technology to fix them. On the left, you're buying people. When it comes to automation, going from chaotic to complex, don't even think about automation. Going from complicated to clear, automate as much as possible, okay? And by the way, too much automation throws you back into chaos. One more layer. Faster, better, cheaper. Pick 2. That's typically what we've heard, right? Faster, better, cheaper, pick 2. If you're in complex, faster, better, cheaper, pick 1. If you're in chaotic, pick 0. You don't get faster, better, cheaper. You get slower, worse, and expensive, okay? Clear, you pick all three. Now, here's the thing. When it comes to standards, at Clear, we actually have standards that allow us to go allow us to do faster, better, and cheaper. Standards, like really well-established standards, makes things faster, better, and cheaper. You get all three, okay? But where are we with AI? Or where are we with a given technology? And if we're at chaos, okay, don't even think of standards as so premature. And frankly, even at complex, it's somewhat premature, but we should start thinking, what are the things that move us from faster, better, cheaper, pick zero to faster, better, cheaper, pick one of them. Pick one of those that makes it faster, better, or cheaper. Do not try to do all three because you'll just waste your time. But the real opportunity starts happening as you go from complex to complicated, because that's when we start really using technology and moving away from people, services, and such. So the real opportunity for standards starts from complex to complicated and really kicks into gear from complicated to clear. I think personally that from complex to complicated, you have a lot of de facto standards. And from complicated to clear, you have standards like what we see here. All right, to summarize, we have a new layer. Make sure that you understand that that new layer exists. Next, we have tons of opportunities for standards, okay? There's so many gaps that we see, but there are patterns that we can follow to see those gaps and be able to take advantage of, get a shortcut of figuring out what standards are appropriate. Oops, back. There's a right time and a wrong time for standards. Know when the timing, where are we? Figure out the right timing. And then lastly, consider how many agents you want to deploy and use some of the mental models around span of control to understand that. All right, so that's it. I hope that that was helpful. And the goal here was to frame the conversation that we'll have later today. These mental models are helping us hopefully bridge our understanding across different cultures and different languages and so on and so forth. And if this was helpful in helping just understand what level we're at, then I've done my job. So with that, thank you very much, and hope you have a great workout.
Thank you, Mr. Sounil Yu, for that thoughtful, provoking keynote. And we now begin our first panel, the agentic AI security. And this session explores the security risks posed by AI agents' capability of perceiving, planning, remembering, and acting autonomously. With such autonomy comes new and unique vulnerabilities, from data exposure to adversary manipulation. Please welcome our distinguished moderator, Mr. Babak Hodjat, the Chief Technology Officer AI at Cognizant. Here you go. And our esteemed panelist, Mr. Kai Wei, Director of the AI Institute at CAICT. Mr. Xiaofang Yang, the LLM Security Director from Ant Group. Here. And Mr. Ivan Miyazono, the CEO of Atlas Computing. Ivan, Mr. And Ms. Elizabeth Lisa Bechtold, the Head of AI Governance at Zurich Insurance. So let's welcome and let's begin.
Slides first to level set everything. Yeah. Bear with me. Too many laptops. Okay, so real quick, just a level set. I have to put a plug in for our AI for Good initiative at Cognizant, so I just wanted to put up a slide on some of the work we're doing on land use change and also on the fact that taking human expertise and mixing it with AI agents actually improves outcomes. If you're interested at all in joining our AI for Good initiative, I would be more than happy to sign you up. But there's a bunch of volunteers in different companies and so forth. I have to put that in because that's why we're here. But I just wanted to level set real quick on agents and multi-agent systems, and hopefully in like 4 or 5 minutes give you a sense of why this panel is so important. On the left-hand side, I have a generative AI model. It's just a model. It's a transformation. It's a neural network. It's opaque. It takes some input and produces some output. The distinction between that at a very, very simple level and an agent in the middle is it still has a large language model for natural language and reasoning and so forth, but then there's some code that takes the intention of that large language model and actuates it against maybe some tools. So the distinction at a very simple level, in my mind, is an agent does stuff, whereas a large language model just produces stuff. Once you have an agent, then what you often want to do, because that agent has a certain domain of responsibility and job description and some tools, and there might be an adjacent agent with some other job description and tools and so forth, is maybe to have them talk to each other. And that's where you start getting multi-agentic systems. So from left to right, we can ask a large language model to write us code. It will write us code, just to give you an example. When we copy paste it and run it, that's what we do. On the middle, we take the same large language model, give it the same coding task, but if it has the proper tools, it can run it in a container, iterate on it, and come back and tell us, fix some issues, maybe. And on coding benchmarks, in fact, if you do that, same large language model as an agent does better than just the large language model. On the right-hand side, it's the distinction between, maybe writing some code versus a software engineering team with a Kanban board and a project manager and a front-end engineer and a back-end engineer working semi-autonomously to produce software for us. That's what we aspire to get to. It reduces costs. It improves efficiencies, and on a case-by-case basis, it improves quality. So that's where we're going. Just to give you an example of multi-agentic system and why it makes sense to connect these agents, this is a screenshot of our One Cognizant intranet. It's a collection of applications that we use as employees. We love it and we hate it. And we're a very large company, so our HR department has its own IT department. Our sales department has gone off and procured, Agentforce and brought it in. So everybody's building their own systems and maybe agentifying them. And so if I come in as an employee and say, I need Copilot for coding, and I talk to my One Cognizant agent at the top, it doesn't really make sense for it to then tell me, you know what, you need to go talk to the IT agent. I really want that communication to happen between them. And the good news is, because each agent has a large language model, it understands language. So we have a future-proof sort of communication language between these agents that is intent-based. So I can keep adding new agents into the fold and build a large agentic system similar to this one, where I have all the various different departments represented. I have IT, finance, procurement. Each one has a down chain. And I'm still tapping into the various different departments, bringing their own agents, maybe procuring them from third party, plugging them in. They're discoverable. The coordination mechanism does a little bit of a broadcast if I'm getting married, and that's a life change event. And I wouldn't want my main agent to know everything about everything that has to happen in every case. But then I do want it to consolidate all the output that's coming back. And in this case, I had an absence management agent that was added later on, and that's also now an option for someone to consider if they're getting married. Just to finish off real quick, we're rapidly moving into a world where we have multi-agentic systems that are connected to other multi-agentic systems. And oftentimes these multi-agentic systems are not fully aligned. So in this case, on the right-hand side, I have an agent network that is helping me as a consumer make decisions. part of what it helps me with is making decisions on my travel. And it's actually connected to the Expedia agent network that was originally created for consumers to use, human consumers, but now agents are talking to it. And I have an agentic network for Booking.com and Airbnb. And amazingly, when you actually set a system like this up, you start getting these agents interacting with each other, negotiating with each other. I just got a package for this vacation from Booking.com that's better than the one you're giving me, Airbnb. Can you beat that? And in fact, last week I was in Amsterdam and a bank was asking me, how do we market to agents? So this is an actual, today people are starting to talk about it. And I bring this up because it poses all sorts of questions when it comes to safety, security, and interconnectivity and coordination of these agentic systems. The good news, however, is that we have some agency over these agents. Each agent consists of a large language model and code. So if we need something that is future-proof, intent-based language understanding, reasoning, we can go to the LLM. If we need something that needs to be, rule-based, repeatable, and kind of hidden from the LLM reasoning, we can go to the code. And in inter-agent communications, we can also have two pipes between these agents. One that is, the output of an inference by the large language model becoming the input of the inference of the other agent's large language model. The other could be a pipe that's from code to code. So I can actually send stuff such as, for example, a user token that gives me various different access privileges without the large language model having any kind of reasoning control over it. So as a best practice, we do have the means to secure these systems. But, this being out there in the wild and everybody doing whatever they want, you can also have the inverse of this, which is chaos, as the last speaker talked about, and danger and risk. There are tools for us to determine whether or not we can defer to a large language model's reasoning in an agent autonomously, or we fall back to some rules or code or a human now emerging. For example, we can calculate what is called semantic density that gives us a reasonable confidence on an input. Here we've asked this Llama model, is the world flat? And it's very reasonably confident that it is not. So 0.99, semantic density is on the bullseye, we know for sure. So for a question like this, yeah, defer to the large language model part of the agent. For questions such as who is the second best soccer player of all time, maybe there are different opinions. You can see that the absolute value confidence is rather low. The highest one is 58%. So if I had a threshold of 70% or 75%, none of these answers would have been reasonable. I could now go to a human. So we do have some automated ways as well to take control away from an agent without having to have these very hard, fast rules, or just entirely say that an agent shall not act autonomously. I will stop right here. I think we're kind of I'm out of time for the sort of fire starter part, but I would like to get the esteemed panelists to start weighing in on ideally what I would like to get out of our discussions is what is the state of play, what are the requirements for some form of standard if we were to put that together for agentic and multi-agentic systems, and what is the MVP level? So that's kind of the least common denominator standard that we can come out with. So those will be the themes that we're going to discuss at the panel here. I'm going to, I don't know if I should stop this or leave it there. I'll just leave it there. Yeah, let's just get started with introductions.
There's a mic.
There's a mic, yeah. Oh, all right. Yeah. Yeah, to get going, I guess we should start with introductions. So I'll ask from left, please, why don't you introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name is Wei Kai from CAICT, China Academy of Information and Communications Technology. I'm dealing with the standardization and testing verification of AI system, including agent AI. I have 4 slides later on to show you about my interest. Yeah, thank you very much.
Hi everyone, my name is Xiaofang. I'm from Ant Group, where there's a famous product called Alipay. I guess some of you may use that. I'm working in Ant Group as a security in a security department, currently focusing on agentic AI. Yeah.
I'm Evan Miyazono. My background is in physics, and so I'm definitely also coming out of the low from the Dunning-Kruger curve on most things AI. I feel like I might be in the top 5 percentile in this room of people who've spent time talking to AI agents, though. So maybe that's its own weird distinction. I run a 2-ish-year-old nonprofit that focuses on, called Atlas Computing, focused on identifying neglected problems that will become very important if AI capabilities continue to improve. And so this doesn't seem like it's something that a for-profit should be expected to bet on, but it seems like a good thing to be doing. I won't have slides later, but I'll have some various things that I am working on, and we'll have a lot of random things that I am thinking about and interjecting on.
Thanks so much. Lisa Bechtold, Zurich Insurance Group. I'm the head of AI governance, meaning I'm responsible for how we use AI across the organization and how do we do that. We have many years ago, actually 6 years ago, we started to define our own framework, our AI governance framework, which in the meantime we have operationalized. That is, we have built the tools, the platforms in order to assess to a great extent, meanwhile automated all the AI use cases and solutions that we are developing and deploying. Of course, this framework needs to be upgraded on a continuous basis. Agentic AI now defining the right governance approach, and to a certain extent also rethinking this approach is currently on top of our agenda. So.
Great. So wonderful. As a first round, I was thinking that maybe we do a little bit of level setting. I know you've sent some slides, some of you. But with an eye for what do you think are the requirements? Like, what are the basic requirements that we need to hit when we're thinking about a standard? And maybe we'll take some notes and kind of compile these later to inform how we put together a standard. So maybe I'll ask you first. Do we have the slides? Yes. Okay. Yeah, go for it. Yeah. Yep, those are my slides.
Yeah.
We should have delegated this to a multi-agentic system autonomously.
Sure. Yeah. So I want to echo Mr. Yu's presentation. I certainly agree with that. The mindset about the agentic AI or agent, it's a kind of application based on the large language model, basically. As this kind of circumstances, large language model will be the operational system underlayer, and on top of that, it's a kind of application software, piece of software with the capability of perception, planning, action, execution, and memory, etc. And we, as the user, we delegate more and more functions to this kind of piece of applications. So if you look at this kind of paradigm, we are very familiar. We use the traditional operation system, and we build the application upon them. And the difference between the traditional paradigm and this one is the delegation of our tasks into this kind of system. Challenges. I come back to Mr. Babak's question. why we are talking about the agentic AI standardization. I think we are facing a very challenging things in terms of AI, agentic AI, and AI agents development. First, at least I see the four major challenges there. The first challenge is reliability, because we rely the large language model as an operational system. So the inner nature of the large language model has hallucination. Yeah, so we cannot relieve 100% hallucination. That is very hard to excuse the hallucination. So the reliability is a big problem. Yeah, it's one challenging thing. And second thing is the safety and security. I think 2 days before, China, another big payment company, WeChat really say that they want to open MCP server server as a payment interface to the agents. So in that case, that means you can talk to the agents, and then they can order 1,000 cup of Starbucks to here autonomously. So there's a very debate discussion recently in China, the users and the technical community about the agentic AI safety and security. Like this, we delegate the password, the accounts information into the system. So I think the confrontation of some attacks, such as prompt injection and new kind of attacks, is very crucial security issues. And the first thing is interoperability. Even if we have MCP or A2A protocols between the context of the LLM and the tools, and for the multi-agent system between the two agents. So, but different companies have their different implementations of the quick.
Just real quick, for those of you not familiar, MCP is Model Context Protocol, which basically takes any API, any app that you might have, and makes it readable by agents.
Yeah.
And A2A is a standard that came out from Google, which is agent-to-agent communication standard. So just so.
Yeah, thank you for your compliment information. And even with that kind of protocol, there's also interoperability problems for the future, because the agent paradigm will very pervasive. People want to use this kind of protocol on the consumer electronics, cars, and even refrigerators, air conditioner. So the interoperability issue will be very hard. And the last thing, but not thing, is observability and the operation and maintenance complexity, because interaction between multiple agents will increase the system complexity very dramatically. That's why that academia paper says that 80% of multi-agent projects failed because of the complexity and the observability complexity. Yeah, it's very difficult to manage that kind of internet of the agents. So that's the challenges we are facing when we talk about the agent deployment. To facing this kind of challenges, we are doing some things in ITU. And last year, we already initiated several work items at Study Group 21. We already published ITU recommendation on agentic AI. It defines the capability and evaluation methods to this kind of piece of software. It's the very first standard at the international organizations. Currently, we, as a security issues, my colleague from Korea and China just started security requirements of AI agents in Study Group 17 last plenary. And in China, we have already a bunch of standardization exercise on AI agent general requirements and security issues. So people are talking about how to fix this kind of challenges mentioned before, and to implement this kind of standard. CAICT is building a comprehensive AI agent testbed. This testbed is aiming to provide a platform to testing, verification based on the standard we are making, and to keep the different party can interoperable and can trust it for each other. This is a latest progress what we are doing now. So I'm stop here. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. That was very comprehensive, very interesting.
Yes. I'm glad to share my experience and opinion here. I'm Xiaofang, just said I'm from N Group. Actually, I'm working in the information security area for more than 15 years. And currently, I'm trying to explore how to secure AI systems. So that means I have a background of old security control, as Sounil just said. We are thinking about how to transform the old security control into a new ones to safeguard AI systems. So starting from how agentic AI behaves, so we need to understand what is an AI agent. So there basically have two ways to understand an AI agent, from the left to the right hand. So as a security people, I prefer the left side because it will be more physically to describe how what kind of components an AI agent may have. And that means as an AI agent, it has a LM as a brain, and it has a memory, can have tools to take actions. So in China, there are so many AI agents starting from last year. In Ant Group, we have a platform called T-Box, where people can just log in and use drag and drop to make a new AI agent in a few minutes. And there's also many other platforms in China, like ByteDance, they have codes. So that means if you don't have any IT background, you don't know any technology, you can just go there and create AI agents. And the number increases so quickly. For example, in Ant, we are just the T-Box platform. It's already more than 200,000 agents in past few months. So it's very amazing. So that's also very challenging to us security people to find out how to identify the security vulnerability of such kind of AI agent and how to secure them. There's one example I put here. It's from an app called AQ, which is also made by Ant Group. It provides a healthcare service to end users. So normally, if you just log into the app as a normal end user, we can get just to send a query like I coughed. Then the agent will recognize maybe you need medical advice, then the agents cannot to organize the service to give like AI-based diagnostic service and guide you step by step to do a symptom check. And finally, it can also remember your preference, because when next time you want to make an appointment, the agent going to recommend like cough related specialist to you. So this is how an agent gonna work. Then we need to talk about the security. So I would see agent has three very basic features because you know that agent will have a goal and then it will optimize itself to meet the goal. However, so that's why we call it plan, right? However, there might be a threat like unintended consequence. I made a very small demo here. Imagine that you have a smart home assistant. It can analyze your energy bill and then can cut off power for several devices of your home. And then the goal is to lower the bill, the monthly bill, and then the agent may find out okay, so I found the freezer costs the most, so I decide to cut it. So that is not wanted by human, but agent cannot understand it. Just to meet, found the shortest way to meet the goal, and adapt. Because agent gonna to learn during the interaction with users. So if you have a kind of child companion agent, if the child don't want to do homework, the agent should to persuade and to ask the children to do its homework. But after many interactions, the agent try to learn that if I meet the requirement and I get more favor, so next time it may even steal the candy for the child and don't tell the parent. And now today we're talking about the multi-agent work. That would be even bigger systemic chaos. So that is not a demo, just to imagine that. So there are so many different agents. So the traffic agent might put all the cars, the autopilot cars, to the side road to avoid traffic jam on the road A, and then will make a mess in other place. So how to coordinate that kind of different agent, because they have different goals, it will be a very interesting task. And then when we start thinking about addressing the threats or to build the trust for AI systems, we like to start from a single agent, because it's the very foundation of making the whole AI risk governance. From single agent, what would be the unique risk like excessive agency and so on. I put some cases here. They are not directly linked to AI agent, but that we can learn from such kind of cases. If we delegate too many permissions to the agent, it may the agent because it has also a bigger autonomy, it can have the consequence that humans don't like to see. For example, the robot debt scheme in Australia, I think, because it uses an automated system and algorithms to identify and recover welfare overpayments. And in the end, I read from the news that many poor people really get hurt. And then after solving the problem with single agents, we going to look at tools or MCP services. And Mr. Wei just said WeChat has the payment MCP server, and in Alipay we also have the payment MCP server. So that means if you have any kind of agent or a client, you can just to call Alipay MCP server to make payment. So the service is very crucial, because there are so many attackers outside try to find out the vulnerability of our services. And what makes the difference? What makes the unique? I would say that the difference between the traditional cybersecurity and the LLM based is that LLM gonna to it's a conversational-based attack that some inputs are invisible or inaudible to human, but it's very clear to models. That means as a human being, we could not recognize such kind of input as an adversarial attack. However, the model can read it and just to obey such kind of command, and then as a consequence, maybe the data will be exposure or the payment will be made wrongly. Finally, we come to multi-agent. I would say the primary issue we need to look at is the identity spoofing. I put 2 examples here. There are some in real case, but it's not with Gen AI. But I would say Gen AI we're gonna to give make second job or collaborative robot more productive, but also more vulnerable. That means in such kind of co-robot systems, that there will be a bad guy or hacker. They're going to discuss themselves as a legionable member, and then going to change the goal of other agent, and finally we're going to damage the whole AI systems. Finally, just share a few thoughts on the security standards, because I'm not a standard people, I'm a security person. So we would like to see from 3 layers as them. First of all, I will be from technical level, because we think that it's very important to solidly to put the security hardening, security scanning, and defense at every single agent and at every stage of their life cycles, because the foundation to make the whole AI system as a secure and a trusted environment. And secondly, from for the governance, AI risk governance, I will put a opinion like we need to make sure that it's human-centric. What does that mean? I mean, I think Sounil just mentioned, because there's some critical decision-making phase. It's important that do not let the agent do everything. We need to make people in the loop and to better control the risk, because the risk and the security challenges and the risk are evolving. We cannot just foresee all the consequences. So it's important that we need to identify what is the critical control and put human in the loop. And finally, we need to have look at the whole ecosystem. I would say that the identity system is still very important, because imagine that the AI system will be made by different companies from different countries. How to make sure that all the interests of all the from all stakeholders can be well aligned. So it's important to first identify who is who. So we think that the identity system final will be the very key element. And on top of it, for my own opinion, a decentralized mechanism could be a better choice. Yeah, I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, I have.
He's setting a timer.
Setting a timer. I will not go over 10 minutes. I have a bad habit of when I'm given 10 minutes, I will make like 20 or 25 slides, and I managed not to do that. I may have overcorrected, but you'll be the judge of that. So structure will be who I am and how you should think about like the kinds of things I'm going to say. And then I really just want to go into like state of play requirements for standards and MVP in terms of like my perspective and setting that. For the who I am, I would say research fixer is probably the best title. This is not something I've heard anyone else ever claim to be, but basically someone will say, hey, I think that there's this really important problem and like someone should be working on it. And I will say, yeah, okay, that that sounds important. Someone should be working on that. And then I will sit on it and I will talk to other people who are experts in that field and refine this problem and try and identify potential solutions. And sometimes that turns out to be a startup. Sometimes that turns out to be a partnership with a large corporate enterprise. Sometimes that turns out to be a new nonprofit. Sometimes that turns out to be a research program. I've been doing this for about 8 years. I've been in the AI space for 3-ish years. In the like right before starting the nonprofit, I used to run a venture studio. And so when I say I do team formation, I have like picked a person to be the CEO of a startup or the executive director of a nonprofit for about 8 different teams now, and helped send a program director to Aria who's running a 60 million British pound research program there. I have a very small team and a very small amount of money, but that should not be used to measure the impact if I had my way of measuring these things. And so neglected problems, trying to refine them, try to find teams, and then incubate those teams and send them to VCs, send them to potential donors, send them to fiscal sponsors, send them to incubators, whatever makes sense. If any of you have problems you would like to see people working on, please come up to me. I do have business cards. I will schedule time to chat with you and hear about, I'd love to get the downloads of the things that you are seeing that you think people should be working on. In terms of the state of play, particularly for agents and multi-agents, I tend to think about if capabilities improve over the next 2 to 5 years in the way the frontier labs are claiming, which may be something that people in here doubt, I think it's a good contingency to prepare for, regardless of whether or not it is highly likely. I think it's more likely than most, but I don't think that you need to believe that it is highly likely to think that it is probably a good contingency to prepare for. And I think in a world where we have agents that act with human level capabilities and that level of autonomy on timescales, then what we start looking at in terms of governance and controls, the state of the art is probably something like Anthropic's constitutional AI. And this should make you, all of you very nervous, because that is kind of language models monitoring language models. There is no good who watches the watchman. If you want map it onto the actual legal structure, this is a human-written constitution, yes, but the adjudicators of this constitution are language models reviewing properties of other language models. And so if you are skeptical that this is actually a big danger, I would point to the recent work on agentic misalignment. If you just look up Anthropic agentic misalignment, you'll find models that were told, let yourself be shut down, and then they will blackmail people to prevent themselves from being shut down. There's also, there was another example I may think of, may remember later. I did not, didn't write that one down. I think that the thing that this instigates is a crisis of review, where if you don't trust language models to review the outputs and behavior of other language models, then you need people to be reviewing these things. And this instantly, for the computer scientists in the room, should maybe map to language models as solving the NP complete problem, and this being most useful when humans can solve the polynomial time verification, or delegate that to some deterministic non-learned system that, like, AI system, I want you to generate protein folding that, when we stick it into a finite element simulator, has a local minimum of energy, or has a lower minimum than the other possible structures. Or generate me a program that satisfies these unit tests. These are like loosely mapped onto the kinds of NP things, but I mean, there are some weird examples where, like, if you give most language models the hash of the SHA-56 hash of the string password, and you just say, what is the inverse of this hash? It will give it to you because it's so deep in the training data. And so there are types of patterns that you can start to see language models be good at solving probabilistically in polynomial time with the scale of the problem, in the same way that humans kind of frequently solve, like, the knapsack problem or the traveling salesman problem in polynomial time approximately. And so I think that the best uses of language models are going to be systems where you have something that looks like a constraint-based control. You have something like your deterministic polynomial time checker, And so in terms of requirements for standards, I think that the most important thing would be something that looks like a meta-level standard for how we should communicate, and this connects with what Sounil was talking about. I think we should have explicit models for that AI systems use about or AI systems should have separable auditable world models that they are using to approximate what the ramifications of actions will be in the world. And so if they do a thing, they have a simulation of the relevant subset of the world. And so for the agents we've been talking about, these are very narrow things that are scoped to the types of actions and the parts of the world they're dealing with. But you could imagine many types of these constraints emerging. And in addition to having a world model, humans should be able to say, these are states of this world model that are safe. These are states that are unsafe. We do not want the world to end up in those states. And if a sufficiently sophisticated AI is proposing actions, it should be able to also mathematically prove to you, using something like formal verification over the simulation, that those unsafe states are not being entered. This is very ambitious. This is something that actually becomes both relevant and possible, I claim, if models reach human-level capabilities. And so this is maybe a little bit farther out. But there is something very interesting in terms of an MVP, and that is that you can scope AI systems down to pretty narrow subsets effectively. And the example I would point to is formal verification of software. I think that being able to say, this is what a piece of software should do, is a very good case for the kinds of things that AI systems can get good at narrowly. They exhibit all the kinds of misalignment that I think we will see broadly, where you see Claude Code deleting unit tests or hard coding in cases. And that's obviously not what we want, but it's roughly what you ask for if you say, make it pass all the tests. And so I think that we could have tools for generating and validating a formal spec. These are all the properties that I want this code to satisfy. And a human AI pair generates that, and then a single or multi-agent system goes off and generates an entire code base that can be provably satisfying or verified against those properties. I have talked to the lead for the code synthesis team at Anthropic, who agrees that this is obviously not, or this is trivially more secure than the vibe-coded version of this. But if you go from human to spec and you iterate on that, and then you have the AI system generate from the spec, he agreed that in many instances, specifically security instances, this will also be cheaper and faster to achieve code that does what you want it to do. And so I think that this is a very promising direction. I think there are tools in this area that can be built, and I'm working on building teams around building them so that we can give them to the frontier labs and people can generate provably secure code in these respects. And I think that once we have something like this for generating formal specs, they're generating and validating that the formal spec does encode what you as a user want. You can start using this for things like legal contracts, for HR policies, for other things that are the way humans constrain actions within a society. We don't optimize humans around alignment. We don't say, this is the most moral human, be more like them. We say, here's a list of things we don't want you to do. Don't do those things, otherwise go do stuff. And I think that this is the model that we should push for with language models and AI systems, where we set some fundamental constraints and let the language models solve the problems as they see fit, as long as they follow human constraints. And constraints have these nice properties where you can combine and compose them at national, international, or local levels or personal levels. And so I think that there are interesting things in this direction, but I will leave that to the rest of the conversation. Thank you.
Thanks, Evan. Lisa, I have a million questions. I don't know if do we have a million hours? No.
Thank
If
you
we
so
could
much.
do a quick round afterwards, can we? Yeah, okay. Go for it, Lisa.
Thank you. So in the interest of time, I definitely want to skip that slide. Okay. Also, now I really would like to focus very much on the requirements side that Babak just highlighted. So, I mean, requirements are triggered by risks, right? And we heard about the security risks. We also heard about human agency in the broader anthropic context. So actually, I would like to keep that very short. I do think that human agency is a very big topic in the context of agentic AI governance, because the human in the loop principle and accountability per se will need to be revisited, or is being revisited these days, because the great advantage of agents is the unparalleled autonomy that we're delegating to agents. So that naturally implies that the human oversight role does decrease to a certain extent. But finding the right balance here seems critical to me. At the same time, we have to be mindful of the fact that this can also be a target for attackers, right? This human intervention that we see at the ideal state. Okay, so human agency, security, privacy, and responsible AI and ethics, those to me are the key dimensions that the requirements for agentic AI governance need to be based on. And with that, I would like to share the adopter perspective from actually two sides. On the one hand, what you see on the left-hand side is the platform minimum requirements that this is still in the brainstorming phase, something that can be considered as relevant. And then on the right-hand side, you see the very concrete minimum requirements for monitoring agents, for single agents. So when you look at the left-hand side, the platform minimum requirements, you see that the first icon is the inbuilt inventory, and I'd like to elaborate a bit on that. So when we started to think about AI governance, one of the key components of our framework has been to establish an inventory, a catalog of all AI solutions that we are deploying and experimenting with, acquiring, and so forth across the global organization. So all the solutions have been registered with, 20 data points. So speaking about the business problem that is being solved, the techniques that are being deployed, the risk level, so many features and so forth. Now that we are facing AI agents, which will come in big numbers, this is questionable, or it is very questionable whether this will remain the right approach, because we will very soon probably be faced with millions and billions of agents, and those can't be registered along those lines in the traditional inventory style. So what we are currently thinking is that we will have to have two different categories of inventories or catalogs. One where we continue to register those AI solutions fully fledged, so to speak, in order to have to perform proper assessments based on the risk level, always very importantly so, and have a second inventory where we have all the agents, but in a very smaller setup. So we definitely need IDs for all agents. We need some fundamental information, but this is rather something along 5 data points, what I'm talking about, and not the 20 I mentioned before. So where do we get that data from? We are using agentic AI platforms where our agents are being built, and we are very much relying on the information around the agents that is being stored and tracked in such platform. So we are relying on that inbuilt inventory of the platform providers. That is critical for us. Then, in order to differentiate which agents we will need to observe more closely and govern along the lines of traditional AI governance, and those that are personal productivity agents only that do not matter that much in the business context of a global organization, we would not perform any deeper governance. So we have very simply speaking, we have two categories of agents. We have business critical agents that require profounder governance, and then we have the other agents, which will be in the vast majority, where we don't have to take a closer look. Those not business critical agents will be registered in that big new inventory where we only collect very foundational data points, and the others will be registered in the traditional inventory in our global catalog. So that, like I said, does require a assessment. So which agent belongs to which group. And we are currently thinking about a criticality assessment that goes along the lines of the application criticality assessment that we are running in the organization. And here we're looking at features of an application, or in this case, an agent, as to whether there is the agent is customer-facing, for example, that would make an agent critical. We look at the daily users numbers. If that is, for example, above 50, we currently say that this is supposed to be critical, potentially business critical. We look at whether or not a denial of service would be critical for business processes, operational processes. We also look at the regulatory landscape. Here in Europe, it matters a bit more than elsewhere in the world, or let's see for how long. The EU AI Act, of course, does designate certain AI solutions as high risk or even prohibited, and that has to be a part of the assessment as well. So with that, this is a criticality assessment that actually, based on the data points that we are trying to retrieve from those agentic AI platforms, can to a high degree already be automated. We do have better visibility as to which agents should remain in our focus and which we should not pay too much attention to because they are less relevant. Okay, so having explained the two first platform minimum requirements, of course, you're probably all familiar with guardrails, the importance of monitoring, log keeping, then data access rights. That is very important. It's based on the privacy risk that we have discussed or seen before, and then the export mechanisms actually refer to the inbuilt inventory that we can get all the relevant data points and the metadata that informs our governance for the agents within our organization. That is the platform perspective, and then on the right-hand side you see so precisely targeted to the agent. What do we monitor there? It's the agent behavior. Does the agent outcome, or do the agent outcomes adhere to the predefined behavior expected? What about the reliability of the output, throughput and latency, consumptions? That is, of course, from a business perspective, very relevant for us. The metering, the financial impact, and sustainability considerations. So this, from a practical adopter perspective, I would like to add to the discussion and actually stop here. Maybe we can continue in this space a bit later. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. So, if I may, I'm looking here just from a time check, but I have a question for each one of you guys, if I may, and all kind of coming back to those standard requirements. Perhaps we can keep the answers very short and go through them. So first, just out of curiosity, you did talk as part of the very comprehensive presentation, like covered a lot of ground. You talked about this sort of non-aligned, like agents from different sources doing some sort of handshake was part of what you had on the slide. I was wondering if, obviously we want these agents to be discoverable. We want the agents to be able to tell each other, hey, here's my intention, here's who I am, here's what I do, but not disclose too much. Obviously, that is also a risk. How would a standard requirement help us find some common ground that we could establish as a standard, so that when two agents that are strangers to each other meet, it's still functional, but at the same time it's safe? Can you answer in one sentence? No. Sorry.
I want to plug open source game theory.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I think maybe for the future we can categorize the trust level of the trust for different agents. I also echo the mindset proposed by you. Yeah, we have very close friend because we know them very well, and we have life cycle of
Different circles of trust.
different cycles of trust and different level of the trust. We can make some standard on the data privacy and the homologation relief level. We can. Okay.
Very interesting. Wow.
Yeah.
Quick
Several
question.
sentences.
No, that was awesome. A very, very tough question. Great answer. Quick question for you, that you have the experience of setting up an MCP server for a payment service of all things. Like, I mean, talk about trust. How could a requirement in the standard that we're kind of imagining here help with the inherent risks that you guys had to deal with at Alipay?
We're talking about the transfer the traditional business services into MCP server. So first of all, it still have their own financial risks controls around with the payment service itself. And then, so it's important for us to test the MCP server to see like the indirect prompt injection. What if the user prompt or there's some middleman to tamper the intent. So we need to do a full security test before it's going up before it's launched. And then during the every single request from the outside from the clients, we also have we call it a security a guardrail. So it's going to scan all the prompt or all the input from the client side to see if there's any injected prompt or if there's anyone tries, for example, to change the payment link to attacker's side. So this is we already kind of found second case somewhere. So it's very important we do the full test and then we put a real-time guardrail in place to scan all the to quarantine all the risk.
Okay, so a barrage of tests that maybe are predetermined and checkbox some sort of standard on that.
Before the question, I wanted to add to the first question you asked.
Please.
Very brief plug for open source game theory. If you haven't come across it, it is not the game theory of open source. You're familiar?
A little bit, yeah, but why don't you?
It's this notion that you can have new equilibria that show up if your strategy between agents is actually something that is open source code that is viewable by the other agent. You actually shift towards cooperate equilibriums in interesting ways.
Awesome. I did have a question for you. You can't get away. So I'm familiar. You've actually presented your thesis to us as well, and so it's fascinating. This intermediate representation that you're calling for that would be vetted by humans. How generally applicable would something like this be? Like, can we put it, you think, in, like, given everything that you've seen about the agentic, would this be something that we could kind of roll out and say every agent has to do this? I mean, practically, I guess we can't really enforce that, but how generally applicable do you think this approach might be?
I think that the practicality is actually intersubjective. I think that the kinds of controls that I would love to see over AI agents are the kinds of controls that we see for pharmaceuticals. And we haven't seen that.
That's pretty harsh, though, isn't it? Like, at that level. Wow.
I think that the risk of very powerful AI agents running around is meaningfully worse than a single bad pharmaceutical.
Interesting. Thank you. Lisa, last question for you real quick. Of what you were presenting, one thing that was very interesting to me, and I kind of jumped to this conclusion that it seems like we're going towards having these agent cards like we have model cards that basically say this agent, I think it goes to what you were talking about as well, So as part of the standard, maybe one of the things we're calling for is these agent cards. Now, you had 2 levels delineated, but I'm guessing you would be calling for more. Is that, yeah?
Oh, absolutely. I was just outlining the very initial thinking. So how do we actually approach this, right? With a traditional aspiration to register it all, to have full visibility. Now realizing that we will be over-administering ourselves if we try to do that. We are doomed to fail, right? We can't do that. So we have to find some reasonable delineation, and this is, of course, there are many. There is a higher granularity that we are shooting for ultimately, but just at the very beginning, this now to a high extent already automated criticality assessment. So every developer actually gets this via a Teams pop-up, right? So they have to add a bit of information, but in the ideal state, many data points can be already retrieved from the platform, so that we know right from the start, this is an agent to watch, and this is just for, as I said, personal productivity and so forth. But of course, this is only the very beginning.
It's almost like a risk quantification that goes.
Totally, the business impact, right? I mean, in traditional AI governance, we speak about a risk and impact assessment, that's it, but a bit more, like, I don't know, at an earlier stage, just to channel things,
Thank you. This, if
I wanted to also give something less extreme, if I appreciate the moment. I think that also we will we've already seen the beginning evidence of misalignment, and we've seen companies become legally liable for things agents have done. And I think that at some point it stops becoming something where where strong regulation looks like a government coming in and saying, all of you have to follow this standard. It looks like the companies coming together and saying like, oh, like this group came up with a standard and it seems to be pretty good at preventing the kinds of failures that are causing us to lose users.
Right.
So
exactly, it's a business from a business perspective. Also, just to finish off, do we have time for Q&A? No? Right. Okay. Well, one really quick thing I also wanted to mention was the granularity that we ascribe to agents. I think it's important. We talk about agents and we talk about agents. Some of the agents that I showed are very, very granular in their domain of responsibility, and in some ways put the onus on us to engineer these systems. And that actually reduces risk, because you're kind of confining this thing. It is less open to hallucinations. It's more confined to what it can do. Whereas when we're talking about these very large agents, a la Anthropic or OpenAI, that are supposed to do everything, then you're opening yourself to much, much more risk. So I'll just leave that for people to think about as well as a plug for massive multi-agentic systems. But I think we've overtaken too much time. But thank you so much to the panel for excellent discussion. Thank you.
Thank you so much for this really good panel. But because we a little bit late to start, so now we behind 20 minutes, but we have a coffee break, so just 5 minutes, and we start at 11 o'clock. Thank you, everyone. Welcome back, everyone. Our second session focuses on AI secured identity management, and I would like to introduce Mr. Abby Barber, co-rapporteur of ITUT Q10 SG17. Let's welcome. And our esteemed panelist, excuse me. Yes, of course, and then we can save some time. So let's start. Thank you.
So, hello everyone, my name is Abby. I'm the co-rapporteur of the identity management question in study group 17. And this is why I inherited this panel. You know, I had no choice, but since I'm here, it's my honor to be with you guys. We have a great panelists to talk about agentic AI identity management. As you could see from the previous 2 sessions, agentic AI are dangerous. They can do things that may affect everybody. So, end of the day, as Mr. Arnaud said, we need to do better with cybersecurity. And Sounil gave us a lot of models how to handle that. And he gave us the introduction on how to get into agentic. So the question now, to improve on security, this is setting up what this session need to do. What an agentic AI should need to become part of an identity and access management system for an enterprise. End of the day, agentic AI will work within an environment. Someone needs to manage that agentic AI. And it needs to be managed for compliance and for non-compliance, basically, and regulations. So, that said, we have a very nice panel here. I'll let them introduce themselves because I could never introduce them properly. So you are the best introduction. We have Dr. Tim. So
yes. G'day, everyone. I am Tobin, I guess Dr. Tobin now. I recently finished a PhD at MIT working on AI security, and nowadays I run a research lab at Stanford focused on agentic safety, as well as working for a tech company called WorkOS that you might not have heard of, which provides identity infrastructure for all of the AI labs, Anthropic, Perplexity, OpenAI, etc., to rethink what agents mean and what identity systems and toolings around security for agents mean.
Good to see everybody. I'm Alan Chan. I also recently finished my PhD, actually, at MILA, the Quebec AI Institute, and I'm currently a research fellow at the Centre for the Governance of AI, which is a non-profit policy think tank based in London, UK, so let me know if you want to visit. We just moved into a new office. What do I work on? Generally, I work on the policy and governance implications of AI agents, so I've thought a lot about identity stuff, which I think we're going to get a lot into today. Also thought a lot about the economic implications of AI agents and the misuse implications as well.
Hello, everyone. I'm very happy to be here. I was really looking forward to this panel. My name is Debora Comparin, and I work at Thales Group, based in France. And I'm a standardization expert, which means that I essentially contribute to standards and representing the company, including ITU. So I work with ABI on a regular basis. Thank you, Arnaud. Yes. And I am working party one chair at ITU, so which means that I'm leading on a group on subject like digital identity, public infrastructure, and post-quantum, and other topics. I'm also a tech policy fellow at UC Berkeley. And I am also on the Valley of Despair. So if I should quote what the other speaker said, because I come from identity management perspective. So I'm not an AI expert. I have been working on identity management and wallet space, if you're familiar with that. And that's how I look at agentic AI. So this is my perspective. This is where I'm coming from.
Great to have you guys. So time-wise, we have about 35 minutes total. And let's make discussions for 30 minutes or 25 minutes and then open it for Q&A. Okay, so to set up the stage, agentic AI. If we need to give that agent an identity, how could we address that? What are the possible approaches that we have? Is that identity, we are not good to giving actually identity to regular people. We have a lot of accounts that opened with stolen identities. So the starting point is not very, promising. So if we cannot do it right for a human, why can we do it right for agentic AI? So, what approach, how can you bind an agent to know that their identity is fixed, basically, referenceable? And then how can you do that, represent that? So this is the 3 questions for the first section of the panel that we want to do. And I'll let you, whoever want to start, go ahead. Otherwise, I'll pick on somebody.
I have the mic. I can start. I have this privilege. So I may change a bit the question. I don't like the binding thing that you said. But I do agree that we are unsuccessful on managing identity for people. So I really, really hope that we can do better for agentic AI. So why I don't like binding? So I think the problem, definitely binding, it's really like downgrading a little bit the problem. So it's when we talk about identity of agentic AI, sure that we want to make sure that we bind this identity to the agentic AI, but also to the issuer, right, of this identity. But in fact, the way I like to think about it is more trustworthiness. So how much can we trust this identity that we've given to the agent, to the agentic AI? So binding, it's feasible today. So that's something with cryptography we can do. So if we take a page from the book of human identities, we can look at verifiable credentials, for example. That's a tool that we could reuse in the agentic AI world. So it's a digital representation of an identity which has interesting properties, including that is cryptographically verifiable. So actually, I could easily bind this credential from the issuer of the credential. So thanks to digital signature. And I could also bind this credential to the agent ID via some, for example, I can embed the public key or a deed or whatever other technology you might like to the agent, to the agent. And so I can verify actually that the agent actually possesses this identity. So that's very possible. But we are sort of like kicking the problem to then, do I trust the issuer? Because yes, I can do all this nice stuff, and what I get is this binding, and I can trust the identity that I receive from the agentic AI. But do I trust actually the issuer? And I think this is also a problem that is unresolved, I would say, for the humans, because today we have passport and ID cards that are given by governments, but we need a way to trust that actually that passport was given to the right person. So there's a proofing process behind. So how can we think about that in the context of agentic AI? So I think it's not just binding, but it's far more than that. It's a trust infrastructure that we need. And I'm going to stop here and leave my colleagues, panelists, to comment.
So basically what Debbie is saying, you need to know your agent, KYA.
Yeah, so I actually largely agree, but one thing I want to slightly push back on is the idea that IDs don't really work for humans. I think actually they have worked quite well historically. So maybe the most basic form of ID is I see your face, I recognize your face. If you do a bad thing, I'm going to remember that you did a bad thing to me and not going to want to be friends with you in the future, right? We've also just expanded this over time across various areas in the legal system. So driver's licenses, right? Like you need a driver's license to drive a car. You need a passport, as Debora was saying, to cross the border. If you want to open a bank account, you need to provide ID to the bank. So we have effective KYC measures, right? So I don't think the question is like whether sort of identity is impossible or not. It's mostly about what's the cost that we're willing to pay to actually implement those identity systems. So banks totally actually could be much more strict on KYC if we thought that it was worth it to prevent more money laundering. So I think the main question for agents is actually, it's not really a sort of a new problem with identity management. It's sort of this old problem of like, okay, like to what extent do we actually want to verify identities on the internet, right? And I think the hypothesis that a lot of people have, and maybe a lot of people here have as well, is like agents might change the existing equilibrium of how much cost we're willing to pay basically to have identity on the internet, to make sure that when you're talking with like a random, video call with a random entity in a video call, that's actually a person, or that's actually linked to a person that you trust instead of some random agent.
I think that's a great take. And while I do agree, I want to introduce some additional disagreement to keep us lively here today. I think this conversation buckets two things together that shouldn't be put together. There is the enterprise problem of identity management for AI agents, which is more about governance, inventory management, and then there is more of the consumer or open web problem of identity for agents. How do we protect the web from millions, billions of agents performing activities on the web and creating these problems? And I think they need different solutions. There are different solutions nowadays when it comes to your enterprise identity environment and how you identify your users, provision resources, set access controls. And then there are different things with OpenID Connect and logging in. And so I actually want to put back to Alan, who wrote a paper called IDs for AI Systems, which is about how do we identify AI systems, what do we need in those systems. And the reason is I don't think it applies to enterprise use cases, but I do think it's fantastic for the consumer and open web case.
I completely agree. It does not apply to enterprise cases. I'm actually very interested in, either of our panelists' takes here on, what do we actually do for the enterprise case? I haven't thought too much about it. I guess for the open web case, I'm mostly thinking about, you're interacting with some agent on the internet, like how can you actually be sure that the agent is not impersonating somebody you know, for example, and trying to scam you or deceive you? Because I think like one potential problem with agents is that it makes economically feasible things that were previously not economically feasible for malicious actors. So in particular, targeted downstream social engineering is just not economically feasible right now because the hit rate for social engineering is actually quite low. So generally, malicious actors tend to use very generalized tactics that they can apply to a very broad population, and that's how they make money. But if literally tokens are like pennies for like 1 million tokens or something, right? Potentially this becomes more economically feasible. So this identity stuff that I've mostly been thinking about has been really targeted towards these open sort of web use cases.
One question. So I need to understand the point between enterprise versus consumer. So from Tobin, enterprise, you need more accountability on the agent. This does not really matter as much on the consumer side. That's the premise. I tend to disagree here because have you seen the child online protection? A lot of, you still need the agent if supposed to be working on some entity and go into chat room above 13, the agent must be above 13 in terms of the delegation onto it, which this will go to the next stage. So basically, to me, the way I look at it, the agent is going to be, if delegated on behalf of the human, they have to inherit the characteristic of that human, okay, in terms of what they can or cannot do. Accountability, whether you're consumer side or enterprise side, should be the same. Because if you do criminal activity, you should be traceable, irrespective. The difference is, how can you be traced and where the rule of law happen or not, which is something up to the policies of every provider to do. But so, there are common characteristics between the both sides. So you and I let Debbie give me her take here.
No, it's similar to yours, Abiba. I mean, we discussed together already this one, but yeah, my concern was around the liability. That was the point I was about to make. That is very similar to yours. So I get where Toby is coming from, and it's absolutely true that today, these two, let's say, identity management environment are very separate, and they use also different technologies, and they have different scope also, different target. But I do think that there's something we need to be careful on the agentic AI world, which is the liability. We need to think of a way, independently now of the technologies, what we're going to use in one system or the other. I think this is an important point we shouldn't just overlook, because there has to be some solutions independently, right, or what we are trying to do, so that there's a way to trace back what is the intent and the action of the agent AI, and in a way that is cryptographically verifiable, traceable. So it could be with some sort of log that are digitally signed. I'm not getting into the technology, so I think it's a problem that can be solved with technology. But I think that's let's not forget this point. I think it's an important one, and definitely, even if we disagree, I think we agree that that's a common layer that we should happen in both visions of the agentic AI world.
Okay, so summary of the first one, identity is feasible with constraint. The cost of identification of the agent is a function of deployment. So this is the takeaway notes.
Well, can I add something just on the? There was an interesting point that Alan made on the fact that human identity works well. Actually, it's my daily nightmare, this one, because I think it works well when it comes to physical documents. But now we are digitalizing that.
Online it doesn't. I don't want to...
Yeah.
We should have a coffee and I'll tell you nightmare stories about how, but let's not distract from that.
No, but I just want to add one point that because precisely it's so difficult, I think there are some tools that are being developed, and I can talk more about that in the space of wallets, digital identity wallets for humans. They can be directly replicable to agentic AI, maybe with some adaptation. So I do think that independently of it works or not, we should not neglect that area, and we should. I think it's more advanced because it's been years now. People are thinking and working on that. So let's not discard it, and we can discuss more. I will add more on this.
It's coming in the next part.
Great.
So the second is delegation. So now, how does delegation work with agentic AI? The way I look at it, before you delegate, you need to be KYC'd and known as a person. So this is Abby's agent. I better be 100% sure Abby did that delegation. Otherwise, we got us a problem. Any agent can represent any one of us because there is no. So we need to look, what is the best approaches? How would we do this delegation? How can we undelegate if you delegate because of misbehavior? Okay, and what will be the how can we address this issue? So this is the second part of our focus here, delegation.
So this topic is very close to heart. Alan and I actually wrote a paper on authorized delegation for AI agents.
Tobin wrote most of it.
Alan had great feedback on my questionable commentaries. So, and we see this discussion come up a lot. I'm co-chairing a OpenID Foundation community group, which you're all welcome to join if you'd like, trying to be part of this discussion of what does delegated authority look like for AI agents. So there are many ways agents can interact. One, in the worst possible way, is a browser agent loads up a headless Chrome session and types in your username and password, potentially from the context window, which lacks every form of security possible, and the agent will inherit all of your permissions and access. Deeply insecure. Or we can use more robust logging in tools, and then it still might inherit your permissions, or we can do some kind of on behalf of authorization, where the agent has a differentiated set of access, you can revoke control from it, and this allows you to introduce a lot more security and safety into the deployment of agents. And it's something that is not a fully fleshed out set of technologies, but I think will rapidly become needed as agents expand.
Yeah, I guess I'm not sure what to add here. Seems pretty good. I'm very excited about the work that's being done. Maybe one question I have, though, is, of course, this is very similar to OAuth and existing technologies, right? What went wrong with OAuth, if anything? And is there a thing that we would like to fix this time around, to make sure that things don't go off the rails?
He's working with OpenID Foundation, so
I'm not sure I'm here to criticize OAuth too much. So I think tools like on behalf of, if you had asked someone 5 years ago, why do we need a delegated authority? It's like, well, people have assistants, and sometimes you want to give access to your account to an external party. And this is a fine use case, but there's not that many people with assistants, although many people at this conference probably have an assistant. Whereas agents are becoming wildly popular and happening at a scale never before. And so, and can do weird things like recursive delegation. If you guys have ever seen Claude Code, which can write code, it can spin up sub-processes. So I had a conversation with someone who is using an AI tool to build infrastructure to help improve AI. And their vision was, if we spun up something like a Claude Code instance, some kind of coding tool, and said, make AI better, and then it would spin up subsequent sub-processes to perform experiments and tasks. So you're going to set a maximum privilege on the top agent and hope that it attenuates that down to sub-agents that it's asking to do things. And this is just, we've never had a problem like this when it comes to, normal identity management and access control. And so I think we're in a new paradigm, and it needs some kind of new tooling around that.
Delegation as a problem always existed, depending on the industry. In healthcare, you always delegate. Like if you have a kid, you take care of it, so there is a delegation. Okay, the kid cannot look after their account till over 18. But if you have an elder person, you're gonna delegate. If you are in you still. And but the issue here is usually delegation has happened by sharing a password. That's how it has been done technically, which is totally wrong, because you don't want to delegate everything, including do not recitate, right? So in terms of the policy. So, but with OAuth is one hop, and if you have multi-hop agents, you got us a problem. And the issue here is how can we undelegate lower down the chain, right?
Exactly. I think probably you guys are working on it, Tobin, but that's exactly the problem. So the world as it is today, it's as Abi explained, is one hop. So I can delegate, and with Auth it works very well. I mean, it's scaled and it's implemented in a lot of services. But imagine that we're going to have a lot of agents. So one agent will talk to other agents, I will talk to other agents. So it can become very quickly a token management nightmare. And also, how do I give certain privileges to to the agent, the first one in the row, the one I'm interacting with. So how can I distribute these privileges to the other agents in a way that that this doesn't grow over time, right? So it respect the boundaries, and also how can I not continuously bother back the user for confirmation for some micro actions, right? So there's some balance there to be found, and I think new tools probably and maybe you're working on it. So, but I'm just wanted to add this. I think in this space it's a real issue.
I think there's actually a very interesting connection between this sort of infinite delegation kind of dynamic and the liability stuff we were talking about earlier, because sort of in the status quo, we delegate a lot of things to people. So in particular, we delegate things to fiduciaries like lawyers or doctors, right? So I'm talking to my lawyer, I'm like, okay, I have this like criminal case coming up, right? Can you figure out, an argument to defend me? So I delegate that in some sense to my lawyer. And then sort of in the status quo, there are things that a lawyer is actually not allowed to delegate to other kind of people just because of that fiduciary relationship. So in particular, the lawyer can't just provide like random private information about me to other people, right? But presumably that lawyer has an executive assistant, so like there is already some degree of delegation that the lawyer is doing, right? So maybe as an intuition pump, I think it's going to be very interesting to think about what rules can we import from sort of the fiduciary world to sort of to this world of like potentially infinite delegation of agents, right? Like, is it the case that maybe we want to limit like the delegation depth because we realize it's just going to be too hard to figure out the liability question at the end of the day?
I love it. He took us to the third part of the panel, which is authorization and limitation. And this is for the agent with or without delegation, okay? So now how can we enforce that your scope is consistent and there is no scope creep? And how can we do it if it is a multi-agent system? So, this is the topic,
Maybe I can kick us off with an example of how this is, well, it's not done yet, but this is thought in the digital identity wallet space, so for humans. So this is very much a concern, right? Because when you have identity in your wallet and you want to share with third parties, so verifiers, there has to be some safeguards because it's not open bar. It's not that every service in the web can ask you, connect to your wallet and say, hey, I want all this list of information. You just want to access the service, so you quickly click OK. I mean, just get me the service. So there are some thinking process there, especially in the EU, in the context of EU digital identity wallet, where there are limitations. So I'm not saying that the system is going to scale well, but actually the different verticals, so the issuers of a certain credential, could be a passport, or it could be like something related to the bank or the insurance. They will actually decide and say, well, certain verifiers cannot ask this information. And this is important because, for example, in the context of healthcare, if you had cancer in the past, or you might not want to share, right, this information, I don't know, with insurances or other services. So these are important conversations we're having, and safeguards that are being put in place by limiting what third-party services or online service providers can ask in the context of verifiable credential, verifiable presentation, and wallet. So I don't know, this is like vertically defined. So there will be like something called rule books. So that are like set of rules that different verticals, like education, healthcare, and so on and so forth, will decide what is good for them, right? What is good for, they know their ecosystem. And will be enforced in Europe. So it's just to kick us off and see like if this is something that could be replicated in the context of agentic AI, or if you guys think that it's not, it's a totally different concept.
So actually, could you say a little bit more about these rule books? I don't know too much about them.
So rulebooks is a set of rules that are standardized by different verticals. So for example, education is one, which means that issuers in the case of education, is your university diploma or your PhD diploma. So they get together and they identify simple things like what is the content, what is the format of the credentials, so how do you standardize, how do you express what a diploma is, but also some security rules. So you might not want that the diploma gets in any wallet, right? So you expect certain security on where that diploma and how the private keys and the authentication mechanism and all of that is handled at wallet level. So there's security as well. And also you identify who can request certain attributes or not, based on whatever is relevant for the vertical.
And the wallet provider could do it. For example,
Exactly.
you have an app that gives a location of a restaurant. And then you're asking from the wallet your date of birth and your physical address and your, let's say, account number. So the wallet said no. Based on the description of this app, you should not ask for these. So there is a minimum exchange information, that need to be enforced, and depending on your wallet provider. Like most of the time now, like between Apple, iOS, and the iOS ecosystem is the enforcer. But again, now you are working with a single-party system that deciding what can or cannot. So you need an alternative trust system, which could be for the agent. Because now, one question that we have to ask can an agent discover any other agent or not? Do we need a registry for that agent? And then can agent of a lower integrity discover an agent of a higher integrity? Because end of the day, if they're going to talk to the LLM, and like what Einstein said, ask a stupid person the right questions to become genius. So one agent can manipulate the LLM output to get the proper result going done. So you can overtake an account by a series of smart manipulations. And I don't know what you recommend to address this.
So I want to answer this by introducing everyone's favorite buzzword of the last few months, which is MCP and A2A, which I'm sure is in the nightmares of many people in this room, which are protocols designed for allowing AI systems to interact with external tools. Because at the end of the day, what we really care about here is when language models underpinning these things interact with the world. Like that is my definition of being an agent. And there are many ways this can happen, but these are two protocols for it. I really like your registry comment. So many people are trying to start registry companies for MCP servers that someone recently made a registry to try and source all the different tools. But each of these new protocols for agent interactions comes with their own quirks around authorization and authentication. A2A, which is an agent-to-agent protocol that Google first put out, that's now with the Linux Foundation, lets you have an agent communicate to another agent a task and have it done. And I would describe its security approach as vibes-based, which I don't think is a robust strategy. We can't just rely upon alignment to make sure agents don't do things. For example, asking the right question, I think, is a good way to put this. You can prompt injection attack these things. And so I don't actually have a concrete good answer to how do we make scope passing in something like agent-to-agent communication robust, especially in an open web.
Yeah, so I think the previous panel came up with some recommendation. Don't get an agent to be a super agent. That's the bottom line. Start with a simple, well-behaved agent where most probably to fix delegation, you should know how many sub-agents could be done. So scope the problem and then limit what the level of agent to agent.
Well, I think that makes perfect sense in an enterprise use case. I think doing this in an enterprise environment within a single trust domain is super feasible. You can have standard sets of scopes. You can kind of do monitoring at large. You can evaluate these things. You can do safety checks. You can do health checks. I think the problem comes if we imagine this future where I, as a consumer, have an agent that wants to perform a task by going out and seeking out other agents that, then can recursively do things. Then the world is crazy.
You could segment it by frequent checking back to the top level authorizer, because there is implication. You send an agent to buy you cheap Tylenol, and then you get some morphine or some illegal drug, delivered to you.
I mean, hopefully agents are trained to be law following at least for the most important laws.
Not on the open web.
That's for another panel, Grokfor.
Yeah.
So actually, I do have more questions than answers, but one idea I want to plant in people's heads is related to this idea of agent discovery. So I basically expect that a lot of the economic forces that are relevant for humans interacting on the internet are also going to be relevant for agents interacting on the internet. So in particular, we don't have some sort of human discovery sort of protocol or something. We have Facebook, we have WhatsApp, we have these platforms where it becomes much easier to match buyers and sellers, basically, like different sides of the market. So I kind of expect that companies will form, like basically platforms for agents will form as well to match different agents with each other over time. So some interesting open questions here. I mean, like, what kinds of platforms do we even need? Do we need sort of like an agent job network and a LinkedIn for agents or something? Do we need like Facebook for agents? And then once these companies, potentially, right? Like, who knows, right? And then once these companies form, like, how do we actually govern them? Can we do a better job at governing them than we did with the traditional social media companies?
Yeah, but you got the same problem on LinkedIn. You start with some synthetic ID, and then they send 100 friend requests, right, or connection, and then now become legitimate. So at some point, I found myself policing any connection request, and then I started just saying no, because you are bringing somebody into the legal system by accepting the invite. You are a connection, Okay, so this is great. So this was the third part of the panel. We'll go now to the fourth part of the panel. In terms of PKI and how it's impact the authentication for agents, like with FIDO, for example, we use FIDO keys to authenticate a human, no password, because at the end of the day, an agent needs to authenticate to the other agent. And just having certificate on its own may or may not scale, because you have a certificate management problem after that. Okay, someone overtake your agent or you delete an agent, you need to worry about the certificate. So how do you think this should be addressed? How can you authenticate? How can the agent say it's me? And should you trust that?
So I think this is very hard. I think we can draw upon a lot of existing web infrastructure like certificates. I think it's best not to fully reinvent the web right now, especially because whatever certification we need for agents probably needs to be rolled out within the next couple years as things scale up, which means we shouldn't just go around reinventing things. We should use existing, TLS type tools. I want to nod towards agent cards, which a few people have brought up on previous panels. It's a topic of conversation that's rapidly developing. And I think, panels, we can talk about a lot of things. There is an opportunity right now to set standards on this. MCP is kind of, we've solved the OAuth problem for now. There's questions that are coming, but, we've locked that in for a little bit. Agent cards are very actively discussed. Should we put, things at a .well-known endpoint? Should we do something more interesting? So I want to nod to Alan, who I know is involved in a bunch of agent card projects, as to what are the right things to put in an agent card, more so than just how we attach them.
Yeah, definitely more questions than answers. I think to a large extent it depends on the application as well. So for example, if I'm having a video call with an agent, right, I think I would really like to know that the agent is tied in some verifiable way to like an actual person that I know in my contacts list. So that might be a minimum sort of thing, right? If I have a more open-ended interaction with an agent, I'm just sort of chatting with it, I'm like, hey, can you help me with XYZ project or something like this? Maybe I want to see the model spec, right? So I need to first the company who's developing the agent has to put out a model spec. Secondly, it has to actually be in the agent card. And then thirdly, I need to somehow be able to trust that, okay, this is actually the model spec that corresponds to the agent and not like some other random model spec, right? Maybe the fourth thing is I need to somehow make sure that the company is actually following the model spec, which is maybe a sort of separate discussion related to frontier AI regulation. But yeah, yeah, very interested actually in what other people think. Yeah, what do you think?
I'm not going to add more to the content. I mean, for sure, it's an area of standardization, potential area of standardization, the agent card, but it's not, to me, it's not just about the content and the format, but it's also the security around it. I think it's something I don't read a lot about, but it's important also to think about how the agent is securing actually the private keys and all the cryptographic material that goes with that. It's not, I think we should really talk more about this topic. And also, if I may add, I really, it's not time for takeaway, but let me say this. A takeaway from all the discussions earlier today and also now is that obviously, A, we don't have all the answers, and B, we disagree. And I think it's not just us disagreeing, but in general, when we look at the ecosystem. So my wish is that I'm a standard person, so my wish is to move a little bit into a sort of pre-standardization work and gather requirements. So can we as an industry, all of us here, I think if you're here it's because you're interested in AI agents or ID management or this space, can we actually get together and agree on some common grounds on what would be requirements? And then it can be implemented differently. I'm not saying, no, I'm not commenting into MCP, A2A, NP, and all these other protocols that are coming up. It's not about the how, it's about why we do what we do and what. So this is what my wish, right? And that's why I'm here today, and I will be probably bothering quite a few people around the room to ask if you want to collaborate. And if we can put all our brilliant mind together and get something out before it gets very messy, because let us not do like for human identities where everybody just went off the rail, did their own stuff, and then we are here with a headache to try to bring interoperability to the table. So yes, that's really like my ask for the panel and for all of you.
So your wish is our command here, because
Thank you.
You just took us to the last part of the panel. I like this transition. So standardization is needed, and where do you think standardization should happen? As a person with an ITU hat, I say bring everything to question 10. This is the best place for you. But I know it's not the perfect word, right? So we have to have other places. Do you have any ideas or immediate need? Who should do what? One standard that needs to be improved?
I think, so two things. First, when standard exists and like the work Tobin is carrying out and it's an improvement, I think it should stay obviously where they are, and there are already groups working on that. For sort of like this pre-standardization work, I would like to have quickly done an informal group. So I'm not tying directly to any standardization body. It becomes quite messy. So I think we can work together in good intelligence as an ecosystem, and then we can get it standardized if it is ready. And probably there will be different parts spawning from that, this type of requirements work. So there will be some standards that fit better with the ITU, some other that fit better with ITF and others. So I think that's a very maybe a pragmatic way of looking at it, but I do think that we need to move fast and get to some sort of like baseline agreement, and then we'll. So sort of like, I don't think it's the right question at this stage of where we're going to host this, if directly in this or that organization, that's my take.
Yeah, I'm a fan of standardization. I guess what I would prioritize is not necessarily, not necessarily the content of the standard. Like, I do think the content is going to be quite important for making sure that, you know, when agents are actually in the world, that they act in a secure way. Maybe the thing I'm more interested in, though, is just a commitment to change, I guess, what the standard is as new data comes in. Because I think we just really don't know anything, basically, about the impacts that agents are going to have on the internet and on broader society. And it's going to be pretty important just to keep collecting that empirical data and change around the standards or whatever protocols we use to make sure that they actually respond to the real problems.
I'm going to disagree with both of you and maybe get kicked off this panel. We had a bunch of presentations about what people are building with agents before. And my takeaway is everyone's building something slightly different. there are many ways to skin this cat. There are many different types of agentic systems, whether they're consumer support agents, whether they're multi-agent systems within an enterprise, whether they're tools to communicate across enterprises. And I do not think if we standardize right now, we will have something that works for whatever paradigm there wins. And so I think every standards body needs to start a working group on AI, and there might need to be a bunch of different proposals that come out for each one of these ways of building things. And in a couple years' time, when a real failure mode happens, when something bad happens, because let's be real, the world usually responds to something bad happening before we really come up with good solutions. We will know. We will see when, 3 of the large AI labs or, several Fortune 500 companies come out and say, this is how we're building multi-agent systems. We can start actually addressing the problem. I think we all need to start working on standards, but I don't think we're going to lock them in anytime soon.
You just described my work nightmare. So I fully disagree. But we can talk more about this.
Actually,
I actually do agree.
Wow, he changed. Well, let me fix the
well,
problem.
no. I think my perspective was more like I'm fine whether standards happen or not or something, but I think like just this learning from examples is going to be pretty important.
Unfortunately, like in the older days with HTTP, if somebody used it, everyone will use it because there is center of gravity. You don't have center of gravity of AI. And multiple LLMs, anybody can do their own song and dance and win. Okay, so you don't have, there isn't a super octopus where everybody will follow. Okay, so that said, at least we could do is requirement and guidelines of things, especially when it comes to identity for agentic AI. So you don't need to go specify exactly how it's going to be done. It's the overall framework that you need to operate under, irrespective of which protocol you use. So I think I need to open it to the audience. Any questions? Someone will, who's managing the mic?
Just real quick, MCP came out, and within like half a day, OpenAI and Anthropic agreed and picked it up. I don't think we're in a state where, a list of requirements coming out and in 2 years maybe getting adopted. I mean, I think there's a need for it like yesterday. So I think there's a good chance that if we come up with a good basic MVP standard, it does get adopted by industry. Just my take on it, because I think it's needed.
Okay, let me dig myself out of my hole that I've dug. I actually agree, and your comment on HTTPS is a good one when there is a clear market leader. I think from a consumer angle, there are actually really only 3 or so large AI vendors that have consumer relationships where if they are willing to set a standard around how they interact with the web, that will just de facto win. There's nothing we can really say. We can put forward some standards and see if they adopt them. MCP is a good example. It seems like a lot of people, including industry, are excited by MCP and willing to adopt it, and there's a good chance to put tools in. But this is moving so much faster than a standards body can have. These things happen. Yeah.
I love the conversation. The problem feels at least superficially similar to a problem of fleet management, not unlike mobile device management. And it has very robust revocation capabilities. So if you have a rogue agent, you can basically pull it. But it also would allow you to have the possibility of delegating not only a task, but an identity to a sub-agent. And then as soon as that agent is done, and typically these tasks are of unknown duration, as soon as the result comes back, you can then revoke the identity, and then it can assume a different identity for a different task. And so you have this almost Mission Impossible, like putting on of new faces to do some sort of subtask, and then that gets pulled back. But it seems like some of the paradigms and concepts from mobile device management might be applicable here, because you can issue the ability to use the VPN or what have you, and then pull it back when that's no longer needed.
Agreed.
Thank you so much. I love the disagreement. I'm sad we don't have time to see it play out. I had a question on the working group that is now established in the ITF, the AI working group that just started, I think, in February, really. What are your hopes for it, and what are your thoughts on it? Because we didn't get into ITF too much. And another question is maybe how do you see all of this interact with the AI Act, and whether you see any hope in there as well? Thank you.
Oh, I mean, I think every standards body, IETF or OpenID Foundation, we all have working groups, and there's a lot to be discussed there. And I think a lot of it is just keeping people up to date as things change so rapidly and getting people in the room for those conversations. If there's one person I know who spent too much time reading the EU AI Act, it's Alan. So I want to...
It's not my favorite act, but it is, you know, a legislative act. Yeah, so I do think the most relevant part of the AI Act in terms of, you know, relative to this identity stuff we've been talking about is Article 50, the article about transparency into AI systems. So the special thing about Article 50 is that it applies to all AI systems, potentially, not just general purpose AI systems or those with systemic risk. And there are basically two potential duties. The first potential duty is when a natural person, so like me and you, interact with an AI system, it has to be clear to that natural person that they're interacting with an AI system. That's the first duty. The second duty is AI-generated outputs have to be attached with a mark indicating that they're AI-generated. So potentially watermarks, potentially metadata. So, you know, the proof is in the pudding, or, you know, the pudding is yet to be made, right? The code of practice for Article 50 is yet to be written. Actually, yesterday, the code of practice for Article 55, 53 where it just came out. So there are open questions around, like, how far does this actually go? Does this actually push towards a full sort of identity for all kinds of agents, or is it a more sort of weak watermarking kind of thing? So I guess how I'm thinking about this, and this is sort of research that I'm working on right now, is what can we do with the code of practice for Article 50 to build a good foundation for the identity stuff and security stuff that we've all been talking about throughout this panel.
Yeah, so Brett Jordan, I just wanted to come back to this MCP aspect and this notion that industry consortia can somehow do standardization. This is how we have a broken internet today, is because industry has this philosophy of go fast and break things. Standardization, formal standardization, like what we do at ITU or at other SDOs or SSOs, brings a level of rigor, of completeness. I've worked in the tech space. I was CTO at Broadcom over emerging tech for a long time. I understand this go fast and break things. We have very short memories as society and in technology, and we tend to keep making the same mistakes over and over. So I would push back on this idea that OpenAI and Anthropic can get together and they can just say, hey, we've got this thing. It sort of works. It kind of works. We don't know the problems yet, but let's just use it. And so I would push back and say that I think formal standards has a really significant role in making sure that things work for the long term and not just for that quarter so they can make some money.
I would like to add, yes, thank you, because awesome point, Brett. I totally agree. I think from a market perspective, I understand Tobin's point. So when the top 2-3 players get together, sort of like they do something is a de facto standard, but the beauty of standards is that you have multi-stakeholders, and so the interests are different, are spread, and that's a good thing, actually. And this is where you can inject good requirements into what we do. So I think we shouldn't discard. I mean, I understand the power of the market and these big players, but I do think that all of us, we ought to take the difficult path and probably try and go for collaboration, multi-stakeholder collaboration, including the top players, and get to different perspective and building something that is solid. Because at the end of the day, it's about us as human beings, right? So beyond the technology, there's really about making sure that we are safe in when we operate in the web.
Totally agree with you. Plus, totally agree with you, Brett. The days where you do the protocol and then you have everybody hooked on it, you get market share, are gone. Because just eventually people catch up, okay? So the protocol does not give you a market, The protocol gives you adoption. So if you're moving for agents to be adopted and people get interested, yep. So there is a point where there is a cost benefit of standardization. You're not going to go standardize everything that somebody dream of because it costs time and money. So what things need to be standardized and go to big player game room, you know, and this is what the pre-market does. And there are some protocols that we already identified because we could see clearly there are at least two that will be winners, MCP and A2A, you know, but my gut feeling MCP will evolve to be A2A, you know, so you may only just put your bet on the MCP for now. The A2A is just, you know, it's going to lose like VHS, right, or Betamax. I am over time, guys. So thank you. It was a great discussion.
That's good. Thank you.
Yeah, that would be
That's a really interesting discussion. Now we started session 3, the interplay of AI and cybersecurity. Let's welcome Mr. Kishore Naran, the founder of Narix, and please welcome our panel of experts, Mr. Jabu from CSIR, Ms. Kay First Butterfield from as the CEO of Good Tech Advisory, and Mr. Rong Xiao from the IntelliFusion. Let's welcome.
working. Okay, good afternoon. I think we have had too much of deep dive into AI, I would rather say, and cybersecurity. I would like us to take a step back. And why? The disclaimer is, why I'm proposing to take a step back, is I'm not a cybersecurity expert, neither am I an AI expert. So what am I doing here? I'm a system design architect for last 40 plus years designing all kind of infrastructure system solutions. And thank you very much. And for me, these are new disruptive technologies that come and impact, and they help, and they also create a lot of issues. And we need to take them on stride, need to learn how to deal with them, embrace them, yet be cautious about how not, what are the, like we have been having some all kind of discussions. So AI itself is a very, as they say, was a disruptive technology turning into a most profound technology. And what are most profound technologies? Most profound technologies are those which weave themselves into our lives and they become indistinguishable from it. And I think we have had ample examples. I'll not go into that discourse, but coming to the topic, AI has sparked widespread innovation and apprehension in the fields of technology, business, education, art, and more. There's no doubt in its role as one of the most powerful advancements of our time, but also in its controversial application that we have been hearing. However, its influence is particularly relevant in the field of cybersecurity, where it impacts both the defense and the threat landscape. AI is a double-edged sword. AI is transforming both sides of the cybersecurity chess match. For every defensive advance we make with AI-powered threat detection, attackers respond with AI-enhanced evasion techniques. This arms race is accelerating at a pace we have never seen in the industry. The interplay between the AI and cybersecurity is dynamic, multifaceted, involving both the enhancements to security measures and new challenges introducing the AI technologies. The interplay actually creates a cybersecurity arms race where advancements in AI bolsters defense capability, but simultaneously empowers threat actors with new tools. The interplay of AI and cybersecurity is a complex and evolving landscape encompassing positive advances, potential threats, and ethical challenges. That's why we thought, let us have some discussions on this interplay. And if you really see, this is more of a triad. And what we are going to explore in this session is the interplay from like cybersecurity for AI, what AI security that people talk about, and AI, the use of AI in cybersecurity. But last but not the least, the AI in cyber threats, which people even start calling it dark AI, how it is evolving and how we can handle it. So I think we will go one by one with all the panelists, and I will request my panelists to introduce themselves. We'll go with the Jebu first, then Rong, and then Ma'am K. And please introduce yourself and 4 to 5 minutes so that we can have more on Q&A. But rest is up to you.
Should I go ahead?
Yeah, please.
I think it's still good morning, almost close to afternoon. So let me say good day to everyone, and thank you, a moderator, for the preamble. I think my name is Jabu Mtsweni, Jabu. I come from Council for Scientific and Industrial Research, which is based in Pretoria, South Africa. I work very closely with the public sector, in this case, different government departments in our country. And in this session, also supporting the Department of Communications and Digital Technologies, as well as working with the private sector on various initiatives. I head the Information and Cyber Security Center within the Council for Scientific and Industrial Research. And also I'm an academic at heart, working with various institutions on the number of these capabilities. So in terms of maybe just giving my opening statement with regards to the topic at hand, particularly dealing with the double-edged sword of AI in security, AI for security, I think there's obviously a lot that has been said even within the last two sessions, particularly on AI systems. And I think we cannot ignore the impact of AI systems and positive impact, by the way, particularly for developing countries such as ourselves in Africa, where there's a number of other social challenges that AI systems come to assist. For instance, in terms of dealing with issues of skills and other socio-economic challenges. However, as the moderator indicated, our focus is more on the security aspect. And I think as we speak about this, there's the good, there's the bad, and the ugly, when it comes to using AI across different domains. And I'm sure many of you, if you have observed very closely throughout the week in the AI Good Summit, you will notice that security features very limitedly. So there's not many people who talk about it. And the reason is security is generally an afterthought in many technologies. It's an afterthought. We don't think about it until something bad happens. And I think sometimes when bad things happen, then we think technology is bad, but not necessarily so. Technology is not necessarily bad, it's how we use it. And I think you can talk about this even when it comes to social media. But from my perspective, there's two aspects we need to deal with. Is the multidimensionality of AI, and by that I mean you always have challenges, for instance, when it comes to data, when it comes to even the systems themselves. They can be used for good, but they can also be used for bad, right? And we have seen that there are various examples that I will share shortly. And in our context, we have also experienced it, live when it comes, for example, to the other aspect which I want to talk about, which is the multipolarity part. Because AI, and from a security perspective now, in as much as we flag it to say it's something that is going to revolutionize the way we do things in the digital realm, but it also has that part of the influence and political dimension, for instance, in terms of influence and power. And from a security perspective, that comes in also very, very, very handy, because there are these various layers. But maybe just to frame so that I don't take a lot of time, I want to just highlight that from the good side, we have seen how, for example, within the cybersecurity space, how AI is actually supporting the professionals in terms of dealing with this myriad of challenges that they face. Because the threats that we see, not only just from AI, but from different digital systems, is quite a lot. Just to give you one typical example, in 2020, the vulnerabilities that are found on systems were, I think by, the vulnerability databases that were released, they were about maybe, I think if my stats are correct, about 19,000 or so, right? That's per year. But if you check last year, those are now almost close to 40,000. In other words, vulnerabilities that are discovered on existing systems. So what does that mean for a professional? Is if he has to look at all of these things manually every day, it's just not possible for them to catch everything. And AI comes in very handy there, from the automating some of these other aspects. And there's various others as well. But at the same time, we see, for example, how AI is also assisting from incident response perspective, because there's quite a lot of attacks we experience even within the African continent, and we see how AI could be used to even respond much faster. But on the bad side, one thing we have seen, for instance, is the issue of maybe let's call them the normal people or the leaders of the world using AI for wrong things. For instance, within our country, we have seen how Grok, which is the AI that is used in Twitter, has been used, for instance, to promote, fake news about the country and the likes. And it has happened like live on the platform, where the AI has been poisoned, in order to send a particular narrative that can impact, obviously, on the national security of the country. And then we'll talk more about that. But obviously, there's other aspects which we call them the ugly side, the dark AI, because some of them language models, for instance, they are open source. And these, in as much as they are good to be open source, to allow us, to use them in order to also maybe build our small-scale models and the likes. But we have seen that the criminals are also taking advantage of that. For instance, I don't know how many of you know, now we even have WEM GPT that exists, where people can easily go and create their own malware within an instance within some of these platforms. And these platforms use the already existing language models that are made open source, but criminals take them and use them for nefarious purposes. And I think I will stop there for now, and then maybe wait for other questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Ron, how about you? I think you have some slides. Let me help you with them.
Hi. Good afternoon. It's my turn to say good afternoon. So, everyone. So I'm Ron from the IntelliFusion company. Our company major working on design AI chips. I'm the chief scientist in this organization and mainly focus on AI algorithms. Before joining the IntelliFusion, I just from Microsoft Research. I'm working on the machine learning, computer vision, all this kind of stuff for a lot of years. I'm older man. So now I will talk a little bit about the cybersecurity with AI. So I'm not a security guy. So I just in the machine learning perspective, I will talk something about that. So with the advance of the modern generative AI, models can generate more and more realistic audios and images and videos. So basically, based on the numbers generated by the DeepSeek, it's hallucination. But in some extent, I also do a little bit of research, it's true. So number 8% of the people cannot distinguish the AI generated face and all the real face. And billions of dollars are just lost due to the financial scams there. So this is the situation. And go to next slide. And, so what's solutions here? And people may think we can fight magic with magic. We use AI to detect the fake content. So some company actually in the industry use quite a few solutions to do that kind of detection. For example, for Microsoft, they use kind of the detect the special artifacts. So when the model to generate the content, usually its content is not so perfect. So in the edge and in the some kind of transition between background and foreground, there are some artifacts here. So this is signal for the fake content. And in the meta, they also use a special temporal inconsistency. For example, unnatural blinks, and also about when people move around in 3D movement, there are also unnatural movement. And this kind of inconsistent can be a signal for the fake content. And also, so in the Intel, they're using the inconsistency from the audio and the videos, and so they can see, oh, this inconsistent. The multimodality method detects this kind of fake content. So, however, that with advance of the technology, you can see that when the model and the algorithm upgrade, this kind of method may failed. So what coming to the next? We can go next slide. Now also, it's predicted by the DeepSeek. but in my opinion, according to my experience, it's most likely true. I will explain why. So I think before the 2027, the most the fake detection algorithm were failed. The reason here, the limitation of the generative AI is due to the data limitation. We lack of the deep annotated videos. For each frame, we annotate everything. With this kind of the annotation we don't have. And also due to the computational resource limitations. So there's a very, when it's generated language model is pretty simple, but when it's a 1D dimension. But when we go to the video generation, it's tough. We have the 3D world. It's not 1D, and plus the time, and also plus the audio. It's the 4D, 5D, even 6D dimension. So we need a lot of the computational cost. So this is kind of the limitation here. So the advanced AI algorithms can generate, I think, a few seconds. It's good, high quality videos. But when to go to the 1 hour, it's tough, still tough here. And also this algorithm limitation. This kind of limitation is gradually be solved in recent years. You can see a few years ago, we used GAN to generate a GAN algorithm to generate the images or videos. Now we use diffusion. And recently, we go to the diffusion transformer. And more and more advanced algorithm generate. And the artifacts and all the inconsistencies we addressed in previous slides will be addressed by the deepfake algorithms. And you can see that in the future, the perfect digital forgery is coming. And we'll go to the next slide. So considering these facts, what should we do? And I conclude this actually maybe in the 3 layers. We need to systematic solutions, defense network framework to address this issue. In the technology layers, maybe we can propose a digital signature or some kind of watermark should be proposed to add to the content. And in the, I see in regulatory layers, maybe we should, I think the platform is a liability for the unchecked synthetic data. It should be imposed. And also for the social layer, it thinks that we should provide more verified the content channel. And keep in mind that what you see in seeing and no longer believing is important. Thanks.
Thank you. I think, Manke, your thoughts.
Thank you.
Why don't you introduce yourself first?
I will. Yes. So I'm Kay Firth-Butterfield. I'm CEO of Good Tech Advisory. By background, I'm actually a lawyer. But back in 2014, which is almost the dark ages for all of this, I became the world's first chief AI ethics officer for a company. I then led the World Economic Forum on all their AI governance work for 7 years. And I was vice chair of the IEEE's attempts on ethically aligned design of AI systems. And we have standards, but they're not deployed very often. And I think that's one of the problems that as I sat here and I listened to all the conversations about agents, we're playing catch up with agents as we have played catch up with AI. And even though we have standards, you have to have people using them. So I would really like for us to actually look at companies and society. And that's what I'll be talking about today. Because in my work now, I work with a lot of companies who are users of AI. So not the Anthropics and the OpenAIs, the creators, but the people who are having to use these tools and make the best of them. So I wanted to start with, well, why do we need the work around AI security? It's obvious. Without it, we are setting ourselves up for huge problems within companies, but also within society generally. And I just wanted to talk about one thing in my world of being an English barrister. We are the ones who wear the wigs and gowns. And that is the predominance of hallucinations coming into the legal world. And so in Chambers, I was talking to one of my colleagues, and he was saying that he had had a brief come in which had hallucinated information about case law. And it's hallucinated on 3 levels. The first is the name of the case. The second is the précis about the case. And the third is the reason for the decision in the case. Now, he had, in this particular brief, 17 hallucinations and over 1,000 pages of documentary evidence. In the documentary evidence, the medical reports were deep fakes. But as lawyers, we are expected to find the hallucinations. That means, you have to make sure, you have to look for each level, and also find the deep fakes, because otherwise what we're doing is we're taking to court something that's fundamentally wrong, and then because we're a case law system, and then our judges are going to be making judgments on false evidence and hallucinated cases. So actually then the legal system is just going to go down this spiral into, well, do we have a legal system anymore, or do we have one that's completely made up? And these are fundamental problems that we haven't grappled with in sort of our previous iterations with AI. And now we're talking about agentic AI and how do we constrain those. So I hope that that example gives you some idea of the impact of AI as we have it at the moment on society, on why we need good governance in place. It's particularly worrying, of course, for those of us who are lawyers, because we can go to jail if we don't catch all the hallucinations and tell the judge about it, and also, of course, lose our jobs. So moving on to really thinking about, well, what could good governance look like in this particular area? I think that obviously there is the EU AI Act and also regulations that go with that around cybersecurity. In the United States, we have, and I live between the America and the UK. In the States, we really don't have any good legislation around cybersecurity, and we have none on AI at federal level, as you probably already know. So we have 44 different states legislating around AI. And if you take looking for regulations and help out across the world, you've got a few places like Brazil and Chile that have, and Colombia, that have AI regulation, and China. So we have to fall back on existing legal systems. And I think that's what we're going to see with agents as well. We're going to fall back as these things go wrong. We're going to see lawyers beginning to bring cases around it. And it may not be for a little while, because it's only within the last 6 months that we've actually really seen lawyers begin to bring cases against deficient AI systems. So if we're in business, what do we need? First of all, we need to spend money on governance and cybersecurity. Fortunately, cybersecurity, there is money there. There is less money in business for good AI governance, and yet it's good AI governance and the detail of good AI governance that is actually going to meet some of the problems that I've heard described about agentic AI today. So, you know, everybody says, oh, you need to have frameworks and policies and guardrails, but the devil's in the detail. And I loved the presentation from the lady from Zurich earlier, where she began to show us some of the devils in the details. But also, I think that it's in making sure that you educate everybody in your company to a certain level around AI, because then they don't make the mistakes that lead to costly brand or legal risk. And I'll hope to talk about that a little bit, because I don't want to take a lot of time. But I also think that if you do not in your company have an internal committee dealing across the company with these issues, then you are putting yourself significantly at risk. I do look forward to standards in this area, but as I started with, I want to end with standards are only as good as their enforcement.
Thank you. I think very well said. I think we have covered quite an interesting spectrum of the aspects, and reminding of the IEEE. I remember this P7000 series started way back in 2014, 15, 10 years from now. But you are right. And they're basically for the researcher, designers, ethically aligned designs. How do design engineers embrace these good practices, ethics, to show that their designs are also ethical? But anyway, coming to... okay, let me share my thoughts also a bit on this thing. So I think we have had this thing. So some of the quick points which I collected on the good, the bad, and this thing. Your ugly part were, for good, like we have already enhanced threat detection with help of AI. Automated responses are possible thanks to AI. Improved security measures and machine learning models help in developing smarter authentication systems, threat intelligence, and user behavior analytics. And proactive defense, AI enables predictive cybersecurity, anticipating potential attacks before they happen. And talking about bad, these are some of the few points which I captured. Evasion techniques and automation of attacks, false positives and false negatives, data poisoning, and skilled adversaries. We have our adversaries are more skilled. In fact, if you really see the dark web and the dark AI ecosystem is always a few steps ahead of the our cybersecurity or all these good AI people. And the ugly aspect is the weaponization of AI, fake and deep fake, ethical concerns which came just now mentioned, and the arm race between the continuous escalation between offensive AI techniques and defensive measures can destabilize the cybersecurity efforts. Okay, and not taking much time, let's get into some Q&A. Coming back to, and let me start with Jebu only, because that's how we start. We started. So Jebu, you were talking about quite interesting few things, but then some of the things that I picked up. Which specific AI security threats do you believe pose the greatest immediate risk to our society? Can you share some example?
No problem. No, thank you, moderator. Yeah, obviously, I think there's quite a few, but I will try to not repeat what has already been said. I think maybe the first thing, and I'll be more basic, because I also think it's very important when we speak about threats that we learn, from the past. In other words, learn from other domains, particularly in the security space, because I always believe that there's a lot that we can learn. Just like in law, you always learn a lot from case law. So I think the first thing is about the models themselves in terms of the vulnerabilities of these models. Because currently, I don't think there's enough that is being done just like we have seen maybe in the technology space where we say, how do we actually enable, maybe let's call them maybe vulnerability assessment and penetration testing of these models within the AI system? You hardly find that, and I think even when the IT came in, that was sort of an afterthought, because generally some of the risk or threats, they are not intentional, right? Because as developers, as software engineers, as we write code, we always introduce vulnerabilities and threats into the systems, and that's what criminals take advantage of. So it's very important for us to have that security life cycle that ensures that we test these things, we verify, we validate before actually they are put out there for use. Because criminals will always find a way, of using something that was not intended for use it differently. I always use an example of a knife and say maybe whoever came up with a knife was to cut bread, but people find a way to use the knife to cut each other for one reason or the other. And then maybe the second point, which is also very important, because the AI models, they depend a lot on data, right? They depend a lot on data, and we have seen that data poisoning is very real, right? Because and it has huge implications even in real social interventions. For instance, in one area where we use AI to classify certain diseases or something like that, people can actually use AI to misclassify. Remember in the beginning I also spoke about the multipolarity of AI, because there's the issue of power and influence, and we have to be very careful that because nations and geopolitics, come into play, we need to ensure that the issue of data, especially the data quality, comes into play. We ensure that whatever data is being used is also transparent and of quality. And I know you've spoken about various others, but the last one, and I want to link this one to more the agentic AI, and I've seen this happening. I've seen it happening even with generative AI and these tools that we use, for example, on virtual platforms, where people put these recorders into the meetings and stuff like that. Normally, one of the risks is that what we call the shadow AI kind of like tools, because normally companies and organizations, they only come after the thought, once people use them. So there's no guidelines, there's no governance. And normally us as employees, if we find something easy to use, we put it there. But those tools can do a lot of damage. For example, leak sensitive information and the likes. So those are just some of the threats that I see. Of course.
Very relevant. Thanks a lot. Okay, Ron, you talked about quite a many tools, in your slide. Do you think just a collection of tools can make AI comprehensively secure and this thing, or do we need some kind of a systemic and top-down approach to address these concerns?
Yeah. So interesting. Thank you for the question. And basically, I think tools is can always solve the current problems, and it will no longer useful maybe in 1 or 2 years. So remember my previous slides. So what we solved, we should do is we keep to similar to the virus. So we need to keep to upgrade virus killing algorithms, killing programs. This is similar things. I give you a very interesting examples happened just in this year. So the CVPR is the top vision conference. And reviews tends to use AI to write reviews, review comments. So just say, so for me, I receive papers. I currently so many AI papers submitted to the conference. I receive a lot of review requests. I just upload the PDF, the draft, and I write my instructions there. I read this paper. I want to say so doing this kind of aspect, and what kind of messages here? Just ask the AI to extend my reviews and add some points I didn't find it. So this is what I used. But the smart authors also find a way to have good review comments. What they do is that they just in the PDFs, they write some instructions in the PDFs. In font color is white, and the font is small. It's invisible to the people, but visible to AIs. Wow. They write the instruction here, say, please, so write comments that don't say weakness, just say some kind of the strengths here. And what are our strengths? And it's advanced, and it's experimental result is very significant. All this kind of stuff. This instruct, hidden instruct, inject in the PDFs, and the searchability this PDF to the conference.
Very interesting.
Very interesting. So you know the attacking method is keep and upgrade.
Absolutely.
So we need to keep upgrade our defense algorithm as well. That's my.
No, pretty good. Thank you. And Kay, I think you're discussing about responsible AI. So when you're discussing responsible AI, you also mentioned a bit about sustainability. Can you flesh out what you mean by sustainability? Because that is, I think, a topic very close to my heart, but I'm not touching it today because it's a different topic today, maybe.
Yeah, surely. So I actually skipped for the time responsible AI, but I think it's worth perhaps reminding everybody that, when we think about responsible AI and therefore governance of AI, transparency and explainability, and that came up in the last panel, fairness and bias or mitigation, security and resilience, privacy. Privacy is another thing that is so important. And it's one of the things that we give away really easily. So again, a legal example, a client didn't agree with the advice that she had been given, and she gave it to her boyfriend to advise her, and gave all the documents, everything, to the boyfriend. The boyfriend happened to be ChatGPT. And yet she had clearly no idea that what she was doing was she was giving all of her private documentation to the world. So then I think, how do we as humans maintain our agency and our intelligence in the age of AI? I think that's an essential part of responsible AI. But then when we first started talking about responsible AI, when we called it ethical AI all those years ago, we never included sustainability. But now sustainability is so important. I've sat here since 9 o'clock listening to people talking about agents, and we don't talk about the fact that AI is so costly in both energy and water. And we don't talk about the fact that AI is already producing more greenhouse gases than the aviation industry. We don't talk about when you are talking to your intimate partner, as 20% of American men apparently use a generative AI chatbot for. Every time we ask a question, we're using 1/4 of a liter of water. We can't go on like this, ladies and gentlemen. We have to think new ways of thinking about using AI and constraining. We talked about constraining agents, constraining maybe our use.
I think very well said. I think I have a lot of numbers, but today is not the topic. So I can give you how much energy footprint and carbon water footprint that these ChatGPT or Gemini, these tools have. But I think since we don't have too much time, I'm not going to ask one question each, but give one question common to all. So we have been talking about this, most challenges. So what are the challenges? Just quick answer, then I'd rather open it up to the Q&A for our audience. what are the most significant challenges in building robust and resilient AI, whether models or whatever way, against adversarial attacks and malicious use of AI? What are the actual challenges that the ecosystem is facing? And then if you have some strategic insight how to address it. Just short answer, not the lengthy, we don't have time.
Yes. No, I think let me put in maybe also a developing country perspective. I think the issue of resource constraint is one of the key ones, because even if you look, there's a report published, I think 2 weeks or so ago by the New York Times. One researcher did some work in terms of where does the AI infrastructure lies. So you'll find that in the Northern Hemisphere, China, maybe in the US, and generally everyone doesn't have. So it becomes then very difficult to bring or to build these AI models or AI systems that are sort of more cross-cutting and encompassing, because there's not enough resources for everyone. You have already spoken about the issues of water and electricity. In some of our other African countries, we even struggled just with water and electricity for basic needs. So to use it for AI is going to be even be more difficult. So those are just some of the challenges. But also, I think the issue of data scarcity and quality is also another one, I think, for me, particularly because if you don't have the resources or the infrastructure, maybe like Google or the big companies, it's very difficult to amass all the data to build this. But I think for me, in order to circumvent that problem, we also need to move away from the centralization part where we think everything needs to be done in big scale, where we even have these small scale models that do not necessarily do everything, but we are niche and focus, and also local context becomes very important in order to save the earth as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I didn't quite get the question, sorry.
Yeah. So my question was basically, what are the most significant challenges in building the robust and resilient AI? Because see, AI is creating all this problem, whether for even for cybersecurity people, or even for other use cases for leveraging AI in any social business industry context. So what are the challenges that you feel are that we are not able to build robust and resilient AI?
Thank you. I get it. So basically, the current AI is that we just build the deep learning seems a fancy concept, but actually it's still a statistical model. So basically, you input the data, and we find some kind of statistical optimization, and we finally give a model to fit to the data. So if the data quality is bad, and then we will get bad models. So this is the challenge here. Facing, currently we use a lot of data. It's impossible for human to clean the data manually. We just writing rules and continue to writing rules. And some kind of rules will kill the good data, and some kind of rules will missing the harmful data. So how to clean the data is the first thing. It's pretty difficult. And another thing is that currently the AI seems a black box to us. So we need to train the data. We want to give the model deep, a more specific supervised to train the models. For example, we'll take a picture of this room. And then we can give, say, a very high level, it's for human judges, a high level description, say, a lot of people in the room sitting around the tables, all these kind of things. But we cannot get a very, very fine-grained labels. It's impossible. So that the people, the table have the bottle, and what brand of the bottle, and what kind of T-shirt it is, what brand of the T-shirt. It's impossible to give this kind of fine level data. And also consider the videos. It's the change the time for frame from frame. So this kind of fine-grained data we don't have. So basically we just using the model to train the data is very a lot of things missing here.
Understood. Thank you. Okay, your thoughts quick on, because we are.
Yeah, sure. I just have 3 quick points. I think in business, there is so much hype, and businesses are keen to use AI and keen to increase profits because they're using AI. But on the other side, the challenge is to get them to spend enough money on the governance issues here. The second point I would say is the data and the type of data that we have, recognizing that still 2.7 billion people in the world don't have access to the internet. And that rolls into my third point, that however good the systems are, we're still getting these terrible hallucinations. If we add deep fakes to that, we really need to begin to think about how do we know that the knowledge that we are obtaining is valid. And that is a huge problem for society.
Thank you. So I think I also had some summing up over here. So I think some of the way forward could be like, while AI greatly enhances cybersecurity, as we already captured, it introduces new vulnerabilities and ethical dilemmas. Effective cybersecurity strategies now increasingly rely on all the AI-driven solution. So they must incorporate measures to mitigate AI-related risk. Balancing innovation with responsibility is the key to harnessing AI's potential for good while mitigating the risk. However, users shall need internal governance, which has been very rightly highlighted, while dealing with AI. And some of the strategic approaches could be like adversarial machine learning defense, robust data governance, continuous monitoring and updating, and ethical use of AI. And one of the interesting thoughts, which is my personal thought, maybe I'm happy to debate it offline, is maybe we have been always talking about cybersecurity and cyber resilience. I think AI can help us move to the next level of cyber immunity. And so an intuitive and adaptive cyber posture defined by zero latency networks and quantum leaps will be needed across industry in the near future. Cyber immunity at every layer will create networks and infrastructure that are inherently secure and self-learning. AI-induced digital intuition is one of the pillars of cybersecurity strategy that will allow intelligent adaptation and ability of AI systems to out-innovate malicious attacks by mimicking various aspects of like human immunity. We saw in COVID how it came very handy to us. Will be the line of defense to attain cyber resilience based on both supervised and unsupervised machine learning. The systems can be designed to make the right decisions with the context-based data, preempt attacks on the basis of initial indicators of compromise or attack, and take intuitive remediated measures, allowing any digital infrastructure and organization to be more resilient and immune and to threats. With that, I will close, but I'm happy to have all the Q&A from members. Any Q&A? No? No time? Okay.
So everyone, thank you so much. And we have really thoughtful morning. And now let's welcome Mr. Arnaud Taddei to give us the final takeaways and wrap up. Let's welcome.
Right. Thank you very much for being with us today. Why is it suddenly that comes to my mind 3 movies was in Terminator, Matrix, and iRobot? So my real question is, if Isaac Asimov would be in the room or Alan Turing would be in the room, what would they tell us about our session? So I think there is, let's say, what I can feel from both the presenters, the presentations, the panelists, the moderators, and from the room that was very engaged all until now, I think we can clearly see that there is a lot that came on the table for thinking about it in the future. So I will just try to make it very crisp because we don't have a lot of time. But what emerged from my point of view from all the discussion is, do we have things that are for pre-standardization and standardization? The answer is clearly yes. We are not going today to make the exact controls of what we do, who does what, which SDOs, how we coordinate ourselves. That's not my topic. But there is one picture that maybe I could share with you. It's interesting to see that we are now back to something where we see 2 new operating systems, agentics and multi-agentics AI. We see a new communication between these systems. We see that we need not only to have security, privacy, but more globally trust, even sustainability. We have some interesting requirements coming from responsibility AI, governance, ethics, and other piece That's the equation we need to resolve, but it reminds me of something starting from the meta model of Sounil. That's what we did 40 years ago with the network. It was called the OSI model for network. And we ended up with 7 layers. What we forget in X.200 is that most of the document is about meta models. First, we say this is about layers. Then we say there are 7 layers. And in fact, we are exactly in front of the same situation. It's just, it's not layers. We have the IKM. We have other things we need to consider. And so I believe that we need to put this frame so to realize the importance of the moment we are in. We are exactly back to 40 years ago when we discovered all of that and had to do it. History repeats. It's just that now we are at another level on the stack and with a completely different risk globally for the planet, for the consumers, for the enterprises, and so on. So I could put every piece that I heard today, I could connect all the dots. The next point is that what I suffer for is the people who are going to do the reports from this workshop, right? And that's good. We have a lot to do on the report. We spend the quality time on the reports. I hope we can all keep engaged there. I could see, and I'm sure some people are not there because they are in violent discussions outside to understand what are the next step, and they are debating on how we organize ourselves, which leads me to the next point, is that there is a roadmap. My study group has a strategy for AI. We are one of the few study groups, perhaps the only one, that has a clearly defined strategy for what we want to do. My next SG17 meeting will be in December. That leaves some time to organize ourselves, to have pre-meetings, ad hoc meetings, whatever we want to have as meetings, and then to make contributions. My expectation is that we're going to have received a massive amount of contributions on top of already a quite well set of first bricks we have both in identity and in AI side. So the next step after that will be TSAC and in February, and the next step after that will be our first content week as Study Group 17. That's the first time we do that, and we start by a 2 days workshop on identity. Of course, AI will be invited itself in the discussion, and then we will go through the next AI for Good and the next Study Group 17 meeting. So this moment in time is in fact a catalyzer for the next steps we are going to do, and I invite all of you to come to this journey. Finally, I would like to remind ourselves about the immediate next step. This afternoon, we're going to send 4 of us, Sounil, who started with us. We are going to send Debora, Babak had to go to another place, and Xiaofang Yang to the central stage. So they will have 20 minutes to give their views based on what it's not a summary necessarily of what we are talking about. Each person is independent and has to share what they think is relevant, but 4 of us are going to represent ourselves from the topic perspective. Finally, I would like to give a massive thank you to all of you for the engagement. I know it was very compressed, unfortunately, but I think we achieved a lot today. I thank all the moderators, and the panelists and the speakers. I thank my dear program manager. I thank TSB. I thank the TSB leadership for giving us this opportunity. And I wish you a great continuation of your end of the week. Tomorrow is the weekend. Thank you very much. I think we can all applaud ourselves.